Chapter 2871. After walking out of the mystic enlightenment forbidden ground, Lin Sun was silent. There were too many things that he had experienced before, and they were all too thrilling and mysterious. He didn't expect the most mysterious and low-key Yuanshu pavilion master to be Tai Xian. He also didn't expect the secret in the eternal coffin to be so mysterious. The relationship between the person in the coffin and Xia Ji also made Xia Ji's background even more confusing. The ruins of fate that Tai Xian mentioned shocked Lin Sun. There were many eras of ruins scattered around, and each era represented a complete cultivation civilization. There was a god clan in all of them. This was unbelievable. Lin Sun couldn't help but worry about his parents who were trapped in it. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun finally understood why Xian Failing brought him to see Tai Xian. If it wasn't for Tai Xian, how could he know that there were so many eras of ruins in the ruins of fate? How could he know the secrets and mysteries in the eternal coffin? You really don't plan to stay for a while? With your current cultivation, you're already qualified to seek the position of deacon, Xian Failing asked on the way. No, it's not too late to seek for a promotion after returning from the ruins of fate. Lin Sun shook his head. Xian Failing nodded and said no more. The two went straight through the teleportation ancient formation and left the primordial realm. Next, I'll bring you along. As soon as they left the primordial realm, Xian Failing waved his sleeve. Boom! The heaven and earth shook, and his and Lin Sun's figures suddenly disappeared. 10 minutes later, Xian Failing and Lin Sun's figures appeared out of thin air on a lonely and steep mountain peak. The ruins of fate is unpredictable. This jade pendant contains a part of my willpower. You should accept it. When you're in danger, you can use this jade pendant first. As for the token that Tai Xian gave you, don't use it unless it's a matter of life and death. Xian Failing said and handed a black jade pendant to Lin Sun, not allowing Lin Sun to refuse. Lin Sun was touched and felt warm. In this world, he had countless enemies, but there were also many people who took care of and treated him well. Go. Take advantage of the fact that no one has noticed our tracks. Hurry up and act. Xian Failing ordered. Lin Sun nodded and took out a wooden hairpin. Clang! With the change of Lin Sun's mind, a sword rushed out of the wooden hairpin. It was 2 feet and 3 inches long, with a simple and unadorned blade and an illusory and transparent body. Occasionally, it would reflect magnificent and colorful light and shadow, like a flash of flowing light. The Sword of Fortune. This sword was a key to the ruins of creation, and one would be able to reach there by activating this sword with all their strength. Take care, Senior. Lin Sun cupped his hands in obeisance, took a deep breath, and drove the Sword of Fate with all his strength. Buzz! Instantly, a shocking ray of sword light flashed out and charged into the sky, causing a dazzling and gorgeous spatial tide to arise in the heavens and the earth, and it roiled and surged. All of this only lasted for an instant before disappearing. Lin Sun was nowhere to be found. What a good sort of good fortune! It actually refined the space-time coordinates into it. No wonder those old things in the 8th heaven coveted it so much. Xian Failing exclaimed. He naturally knew that after Luo Tongtian's disaster, the immortal giants of the 8th heaven spent a lot of effort to find the eternal coffin, Sword of Fortune, and other treasures left by Luo Tongtian. After staring silently for a while, Xian Failing was completely at ease. Nothing unexpected happened. However, just as he was about to leave, a ripple appeared in the void far away, followed by a terrifying aura sweeping out. Xian Failing sneered in his heart. The old things of the 8th heaven are really unwilling to give up. Unfortunately, you were a step too late. Shaking his head, he suddenly let out a long roar. Fellow Taoists, what are you here for? His voice spread through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In the extreme distance, an old voice sounded. Deputy Pavilion Master Xian, what are you here for? To give someone away, Xian Failing said with a smile. Where is he? A cold voice rang out. Of course, he's gone. Xian Failing smiled happily. If you want to continue to stay here, please do as you please. I won't accompany you any longer. After speaking, He laughed loudly and gradually walked away. As soon as his figure disappeared, one figure after another with terrifying aura appeared on the top of that mountain, sensing around. Each of these figures had the aura of a transcendent realm master. After a while, the faces of these figures sank. They couldn't sense and capture any trace of useful aura. This Xian failing must know where this kid went. Should we go and find out what he said? Unless we capture him, he is destined not to reveal any information to us. Capture? This old monster Xian has been in the transcendent realm for tens of thousands of years. It is said that he has already reached the great perfection realm. Moreover, he is arrogant and ruthless. Even if we attack together, it will not be easy to capture him. Damn it, sooner or later, I will find old monster Xian to settle today's account. Let's go. We don't have a chance to capture him this time, but there will be another chance. No matter where he goes, he will eventually return to Yuan's sect. Won't he? Let's go. As they conversed, these figures with boundlessly terrifying auras vanished into thin air. From beginning to end, there was no trace left. It was as if everything that had happened just now was an illusion. Xian failing stood under the sky, silently sensing for a long time, and then sneered silently. The reason why he wanted to take Lin Sun away from Yuan's sect was that the power of order covering Yuan's sect would capture the traces and aura of Lin Sun when he left. Through these, those enemies would be able to detect Lin Sun's whereabouts. But it was different in the outside world. Without the power of order of Yuan's sect, it was destined that no one would know where he went this time. Lin Sun was in a trance. As if being dragged in a space-time tunnel, the colorful and magnificent light twisted and changed. Lin Sun was unable to resist the terrifying power of teleportation. He could only firmly hold the sword of fate in his hand. Nobody knew how long it had been. All of a sudden, boom, a violent tremor sounded. Lin Sun only felt a tingling in front of his eyes, and then his figure became light and fell down uncontrollably. Then, with the operation of his cultivation, Lin Sun suddenly became sober, and his figure steadily stopped in the void. The first thing that came into his sight was a blue sun hanging high in the sky. It was shining with a magnificent icy color, and the light it emitted was also piercingly cold, which looked extremely strange. The earth was covered with ice and snow, and the vast mountains and rivers were all wrapped in silver. Heavy snowflakes like goose feathers fluttered in the air, just like broken jade. This was a vast and magnificent world of ice and snow. The airflow in the mouth and nose was mixed with coldness like a sharp blade. Whoosh! Lin Sun's figure landed on the thick white snow. As he spread out his divine sense, he roughly judged that he was in the depths of an inaccessible mountain range. The rules of the great way of this world are so strange. Lin Sun showed a strange expression. Anyone who stepped into the sixth heaven of Emperor Path, lawless realm, could adapt to the power of the rules of this world at once, no matter which strange world or universe they went to. In other words, the rules and power of heaven and earth could no longer hinder the path of the cultivators. Now that Lin Sun was already in the late stage of heavenly longevity realm, he naturally wouldn't care about these things. But at this moment, in this world of ice and snow, he felt a strong, repulsive, and oppressive aura emanating from heaven and earth. It was as if the world regarded him as an alien and resisted his arrival. Is this a world transformed from an era's relic? Lin Sun pondered in his heart. Between eras, there was bound to be repulsion and resistance. When this kind of repulsion and resistance was reflected in the cultivators, there would be a problem like the one Lin Sun was facing at the moment. He came from the Lingwu era, and this place was very likely to be another era's world. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to suffer from this invisible, repulsive, and oppressive force. Sure enough, as Lin Sun ran his cultivation and restrained his aura, the repulsive and oppressive aura of heaven and earth disappeared at once. After standing silently for a moment, Lin Sun put away the sword of fate and hung the fiery red jade engraved with the word Chun on his waist. He decided to leave this place and search for a place where living beings resided. He wanted to find out where he was. However, when he found out, Lin Sun let out a muffled groan and stopped. There was something wrong with the rules of heaven and earth. It was okay to restrain his aura, but as long as he ran his cultivation, the world seemed to want to kill him, producing a terrifying, oppressive force. Even with Lin Sun's cultivation, he couldn't resist it. Moreover, Lin Sun had a strong premonition that if he insisted on running his cultivation, it was very likely that he would be killed by the power of rules covering this world. Lin Sun immediately stopped and stood in the flying snow, his expression uncertain. If he couldn't use his cultivation, didn't it mean that in this strange world, he was no different from ordinary people with his cultivation? Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun tried again. He slowly ran his cultivation and released the aura belonging to the Emperor realm. But soon his figure shook and he almost coughed up blood, so he quickly restrained his aura. Even the aura of the Emperor realm couldn't be used, and it would also be fatally suppressed. Lin Sun didn't give up and continued to try. The aura of the quasi-Emperor realm, no, not even the Sage realm. When Lin Sun released the aura belonging to the 9th level of the Longevity realm, the terrible oppressive force of heaven and earth finally weakened a lot. According to Lin Sun's deduction, even if he suppressed his cultivation to the Longevity realm, he could only maintain it for about an hour. Once the time passed, he was doomed to be unable to bear the oppression of the rules of heaven and earth. With such an inference, Lin Sun was speechless and surprised. The relic of an era represents a complete cultivation civilization system. Does it mean that only by practicing the cultivation inheritance of this civilization can I not be suppressed and rejected by the rules of heaven and earth? Lin Sun pondered. He had obtained the power of the immortal path inheritance belonging to the last era, so he was very clear that the cultivation system born in different era civilizations was also different. For example, in the last era, the cultivation realm was divided into Zifu, Golden Hall, Yin-Yang Jindan, Nether Transformation Realm, Nirvana Realm, Earthly Immortal, Fairy Immortal, and so on. In such a comparison, if the world he was in at this time was a new and complete cultivation civilization, then its cultivation system was destined to be different. And the cultivation system was often derived from the deduction of the rules of heaven and earth. For example, the cultivation system of the last era. It was deduced from the laws of the heavens and the earth after countless years of comprehension and deliberation by countless cultivators, and it was deduced from the order of the immortal Tao. Thinking of this, Lin Sun immediately came up with a good way to solve his predicament. Chapter 2872. Lin Sun immediately sat cross-legged, got rid of distracting thoughts, and calmly sensed the phenomenon of heaven and earth. A blue-eyed sun hung high in the sky, sprinkling biting cold air, which turned into heavy snow all over the sky. The earth was covered with ice and snow, and the mountains, rivers, grass, and trees all showed a cold breath. Gradually, Lin Sun sensed the rules of heaven and earth belonging to this era, from which he comprehended the mystery of the Great Way. The Great Way was invisible, nameless, indescribable, and indescribable. Every epoch of civilization had a complete cultivation system. The birth of this cultivation system came from the cognition and summary of the Great Way of Heaven by countless practitioners. After countless years, it was perfected little by little and formed a complete and huge system. For example, the division of realms, the understanding of the Great Way, the understanding of the nature of all things in the world, and the definition and elaboration of the way of cultivation all belong to the category of the cultivation system. Generally speaking, the rules of the Great Way of an era could be generally called the Great Way of Heaven. The world was heartless and treated all things as dogs. This sentence was the most accurate exposition of the Great Way of Heaven. There is no such thing as benevolence and righteousness in the Great Way. Therefore, under the Great Way, there was no difference between the cultivators and the ordinary people. The core was that practitioners could comprehend the mystery of the Great Way of Heaven. so as to realize their own transformation and evolution. But the ordinary people were trapped in the cycle of birth, old age, sickness, and death. For those who had never cultivated, they might not succeed in comprehending the breadth of the great way of heaven and earth, even if they spent their whole lives. But for people like Lin Sun, it was absolutely a piece of cake to comprehend a completely strange great way of heaven. The reason was very simple. Although the rules of the great way were different, they reached the same goal by different means. Gradually, there were plentiful wisps of the great way of heaven around, which turned into wisps of blue mist and gathered to Lin Sun. With the nourishment of these wisps of spiritual qi, Lin Sun's own breath began to rise gradually. Martial realm, gang spirit realm. In less than an hour, Lin Sun's breath was emitting the breath of sea spirit realm. At this time, as the breath around him gradually increased, the spiritual qi became more and more vast. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth within a radius of thousands of meters swarmed over like clouds and mist. From a distance, Lin Sun's cultivation place was like a blue funnel. This was not the path of recultivation. After sensing the rules of this world, Lin Sun deduced a brand new way of cultivation and transformed his cultivation step by step. Simply speaking, it was equivalent to changing a method of cultivation, and it was for the sake of allowing one's strength to gradually adapt to the laws of this world. Just like at this moment, as Lin Sun's comprehension deepened, his understanding of the rules of heaven and earth deepened. With his understanding and wisdom, it was easy for him to deduce the most suitable cultivation trick from it. The aura of the great way of gang spirit realm emanating from him was no longer oppressed by the rules of heaven and earth. Suddenly, Lin Sun, who was meditating, frowned and opened his eyes quietly. In the distance, several figures flashed over, and they emitted a wave of fine sounds of the air being torn apart. In the boundless snowy world, it was extremely striking. There really is someone. How could this be? Could it be that the ancient legend is true? They were 3 men and 1 woman. They talked to each other with their spiritual awareness, and their qi immediately shrouded Lin Sun. When they were only thousands of meters away from Lin Sun, a powerful man in black armor with a spear in his hand showed a relaxed look. Oh, it turns out to be a little guy in yin-yang realm. Don't panic, everyone. He waved his hand as if he had seen through Lin Sun's cultivation, but his eyes were still extremely cold. A black-robed old man with a malicious look frowned and said, "It's really yin-yang realm. But it's strange that with his insignificant cultivation, how did he enter this forbidden area? For countless years, no one has ever been able to break into this place under our eyes." At first, I thought it was very likely that he was the outsider that the great Qin clan wanted to catch. But now it seems that it is not the case at all. He is too weak. How could a person who can come from outside the great Qin realm be so weak? Another rugged middle-aged man shook his head. "Why don't we capture him and ask him?" The only woman among them said coldly. Her snow-white long hair was combed into a long braid, and she was dressed in black. Her figure was vigorous, and her breath was swift and fierce. She was about to take action immediately. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly stood up and said, "Everyone, let's talk nicely. If you have doubts, I also have something to ask you. There's no need to fight and kill." The 3 men and 1 woman were all stunned, and then a strange look appeared on their faces. "You're just a little martial artist in yin-yang realm, but you talk big." The malevolent-looking black-robed old man's eyes were cold and fierce. "Since you appeared in this forbidden area, you have already broken the rules. I have no interest in talking to you. Come over." Boom! He directly made a move and grabbed at Lin Sun through the air, wanting to capture him. Cultivation comparable to the true saint realm. Lin Sun could tell the old man's cultivation at a glance. His figure flashed, and he easily avoided the attack. The old man was stunned. A little guy in yin-yang realm had actually avoided his capture. The pupils of the others also shrank. Something was wrong. "Everyone, don't you think it is a little too rash to take action without knowing the situation clearly?" Lin Sun sighed softly. In the eternal world, with his cultivation at the late stage of heavenly longevity realm, he could easily kill a small fry like this with just a hint of his breath. But now, he had just arrived here, and in the face of the strange rules of heaven and earth, he could only bear with it. Rash, the man in black armor said coldly. For countless years, this place has been designated as a forbidden area by the Great Qin divine clan. No one is allowed to enter without permission. Those who violate this rule will die. Do you know that? Lin Sun shook his head. No. The Great Qin divine clan? Could it be the divine clan in the ruins of this era? Can you muddle through by pretending to be deaf and dumb? Go to hell. The old man attacked again. Lin Sun had avoided his attack before, so he seemed to be quite unconvinced. So this time, when he attacked, he used his real strength. Boom! He stretched out his hand and grabbed. The wind and snow all over the sky burst into chaos, and a dazzling red hand shrouded Lin Sun. Don't kill him. The white-haired woman in black reminded him immediately. But this time, a cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes, and his figure disappeared into thin air. Swish! A sword chi flashed. A bloody head was thrown into the air. The old man in black robe, who had a cultivation comparable to the true sage realm, died on the spot. The man in black armor and others were all shocked, and their expressions changed greatly. Was this the power of a small warrior of Yin-Yang realm? Now, can we talk properly? Next to the headless body of the old man, Lin Sun asked indifferently. What he used before was the power of the 9th level of longevity tribulation. Although he was oppressed by the rules of heaven and earth, it was enough for him to hold on for half an hour. Kill! But to Lin Sun's surprise, the man in black armor did not hesitate at all. He rushed to kill Lin Sun at the first time, waving his spear, and the sharp light shot between heaven and earth. His combat power was comparable to that of the great sage realm. At the same time, the rugged man and the white-haired woman in black also took action. The former waved a saber with surging green flames, and the latter took out a long black and white sword. All of them had amazing chi. The three moved together and besieged Lin Sun. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning, and he didn't hesitate anymore. Boom! He waved his sleeves, and in the deafening roar, the three figures flew out as if they were crushed by a holy mountain. Among them, the bodies of the man in black armor and the rugged man directly burst into pieces, turning into blood splashing. They died directly on the spot. The white-haired woman in black was seriously injured. She rolled on the ground like a gourd, with blood spurting from her mouth and nose. She was dying. One blow overwhelmed the whole field. This made the white-haired woman in black scream in horror, feeling unprecedented fear. Shut up. Not far away. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and terrible. His words made the white-haired woman's voice stop abruptly, and she trembled all over. However, she did not notice that a trace of blood dripped from the corner of Lin Sun's mouth, which evaporated in an instant. In the previous blow, he used the power beyond the 9th level of longevity tribulation. Although he defeated the enemy in one fell swoop, he was also injured by the oppression of the rules of heaven and earth. The blood in his body was rolling, and he was extremely uncomfortable. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun stepped forward, stared at the white-haired woman in black, and said, "I'll give you a chance. Let go of your defense, and let me check your soul. In this way, you can live. If you refuse, I'll break it directly." Before he finished, the white-haired woman in black had already said in a trembling voice in horror, "I promise." Lin Sun nodded and did not ridicule her timidity and weakness. Half a quarter later, Lin Sun had got the information he wanted from the soul of the white-haired woman in black. After a moment of silence, he used a secret method to restrict the cultivation of the white-haired woman in black, and then left with the woman. 7 days later, the restriction will be lifted. During this period, you can stay here. In a cave covered with ice and snow, Lin Sun left the white-haired woman in black, walked out of the cave, looked around, and left directly. He really let me go, In the cave, the white-haired woman in black was in a trance, as if she couldn't believe it. The snow was swirling, and the world was white. 2 hours later, in the depths of a mountain, thousands of meters below the ground, Lin Sun carved out a cave residence here and set up a lot of magical restrictive power. Unfortunately, the realm of the power I can use is too low. At most, I can't avoid the detection of the Emperor-to-be. Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground and sighed in his heart. Because of the different rules of heaven and earth, everything he did was hindered. Immediately, Lin Sun shook his head, got rid of distractions, and began to meditate. According to his speculation, within 3 days, he would be able to exert the power of the Saint Realm without being suppressed by the rules of heaven and earth. If he had more time, it would not be difficult to restore the power of the Emperor-to-be or the Emperor-to-be. At the end of the day, he didn't lack anything but time. P.S. Let me explain. Every civilization has its own language, but it doesn't affect the plot even if it's not differentiated in the text. Chapter 2873. From a memory of the white-haired woman in black, Lin Sun understood this world. This world was called the Qin Celestial Realm, and there was a complete cultivation civilization. The cultivators here were called martial artists. The cultivation realms were First Origin Realm, 2 Forms Realm, 3 Talents Realm, for Symbols Realm, 5 Element Realm, 6 Combination Realm, 7 Star Realm, 8 Desolate Realm, and 9 Extreme Realm. Above that were the 3 Martial Honored Realms and a legendary Martial God Realm. After understanding the names of these cultivation realms and combining it with his own understanding of the rules of heaven and earth, Lin Sun immediately understood. In the Qin Celestial Realm, from First Origin Realm to 5 Element Realm corresponded to the True Martial Realm to the Reincarnation Developing Realm. 6 Combination Realm corresponded to the Immortal Realm, 7 Star Realm corresponded to the Sage Realm, 8 Desolate Realm corresponded to the Quasi-Emperor Realm, and 9 Extreme Realm corresponded to the 9 stages of the Emperor Realm. In this way, the 3 Honorable Realm corresponded to the 3 Immortal Realm, and the legendary Martial God Realm probably corresponded to the Eternal Realm. This discovery made Lin Sun quite interested. Although the era he was in was different from the Qin Celestial Realm, and the names of the cultivation realms were different, the pursuit and division of the path of Tao vaguely corresponded with each other. This further proved Lin Sun's judgment. The era, the cultivation system, the rules of heaven, these could be different, but the cultivator's understanding and pursuit of the path of Tao, as well as the control of power, were all different paths leading to the same goal. In short, no matter what the names of the cultivation realms were, they were all about the transformation and evolution of one's body. When I can use the power of the Immortal Realm, I will be able to comprehend the rules and the power of order in this world. At that time, I will not be hindered in this world, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. Apart from this, Lin Sun learned that the area he was in was called the 9th Forbidden Area, and it had existed since countless years ago. The 9th Forbidden Area covered an area of 30,000 miles. A long time ago, it was regarded as an ominous place by the Qin Celestial clan, so they sent forces to seal off the area. The many large forces under the Great Qin God Clan's command had taken turns to guard the 9th Forbidden Area for countless years until now. From the memories of the white-haired woman, Lin Sun learned that these forces had another purpose for guarding the 9th Forbidden Area. Capture the outsider. This was because the 9th Forbidden Zone was viewed as an entrance to the Great Qin Divine Realm from the outside world. Cultivators who did not belong to the Great Qin Celestial Realm would appear in the 9th Forbidden Zone if they came to the Great Qin Celestial Realm. This was the decree of the Great Qin Divine Clan, and it had been passed down to this day. But in the memory of the white-haired woman in black, Lin Sun learned that there had been no other outsiders in the 9th Forbidden Zone for countless years except himself. This was too abnormal. The Sword of Fortune placed itself in the 9th Forbidden Area of the Great Qin Divine Realm, and this place was seen as an entrance to capture outsiders. It was tightly sealed, and it was ordered by the Great Qin Divine Clan. Lin Sun was puzzled. A god race controlled an epic ruins world. So why did they muster such a large force to seal off the ninth forbidden area until now? Lin Sun realized that the identity of the white-haired woman in black was not high enough to know the real secret behind the blockade of the ninth forbidden zone. And if he wanted to know this secret, perhaps he could only start with the Great Qin Divine Clan. According to this woman's memories, the Great Qin Divine Clan was fully deserving of being the supreme overlord of this realm. Their ancestor had once produced a true martial god. For countless years, in the eyes of the billions of cultivators in the Great Qin Divine Realm, the status of the Great Qin Divine Clan was like the Eternal Divine Clan. In the eyes of the cultivators in the eternal world, unreachable and legendary. After thinking for a long time, Lin Sun shook his head and continued to meditate. He had come to the ruins of fortune for two purposes. The first was to rescue his trapped parents. The second was to find clues related to Xia Ji's background. As for the other things, he was not interested at all. As time passed, the aura that Lin Sun exuded grew stronger and stronger, showing signs of rising steadily. Occasionally, it would reflect many flying divine light rain, and the sound of Tao was like thunder. Fortunately, the underground cave abode was covered with restrictive power, so he did not have to worry about being detected by the outside world. 3 days later, Lin Sun's aura was already comparable to the Sage King realm, roughly equivalent to the cultivation of the seven-star realm in the Great Qin Divine Realm. I wonder if with my current strength, if I display the power of the Quasi-Emperor realm or the Emperor realm, the pressure of the laws of heaven and earth will be much weaker, Lin Sun pondered. At this moment, a subtle sound of conversation suddenly came from the restrictive formation of the cave abode. This was a wonderful restrictive formation called the slightest movement of grass, which could capture the movement within a range of 10,000 feet in the first time. Haven't you found the murderer who killed Feng Ying and the others? No, but it can be inferred that the murderer must still be in the ninth forbidden zone. The forces stationed nearby have already set up an inescapable net. It is almost impossible for the murderer to escape. It's been countless years, and nothing out of the ordinary has ever happened in the ninth forbidden zone. But something so bloody happened today. Could it be that an outsider has really appeared? Don't talk nonsense. Continue to search. In any case, we must find the murderer. Otherwise, when Lord Feng Yun arrives tomorrow and learns that Feng Ying has died, who can bear his anger? Hurry up. The sounds of conversation soon disappeared. Lin Sun's black eyes surged. There was no doubt that in the past 3 days, the great forces stationed near the ninth forbidden zone had sent forces to search for him, and they had learned the death of the 3 men and 1 woman. Feng Ying. Lin Sun remembered the information he got from the memory of the white-haired woman in black. Feng Ying was the man in black armor who was killed by him. He came from the Feng clan, a great force in the Great Qin Divine Realm. In the past 10,000 years, the ninth forbidden zone had been guarded by the Feng clan. Lin Sun thought for a while and decided to stay put. However, for the sake of safety, he got up and rearranged the restrictive formation around the cave abode. Now, he could exert the power of the Sage King realm. So the power of the restrictive formation was naturally completely different from before. After doing this, Lin Sun meditated again. According to his estimation, in less than 2 days, he could exert his strength to the level of the Quasi-Emperor realm without being suppressed by the rules of this world. However, it was impossible for him to increase his strength as easily as before. The reason was that the higher the realm, the more mysterious and obscure the mystery of the Great Way needed to be comprehended and mastered, and the longer it would take. However, Lin Sun didn't care. No matter how long it took, it would not take more than a year for his strength to completely recover to its previous peak. This was not a recultivation path, but just to adapt to the rules of a strange cultivation civilization. But just 1 day later, Lin Sun, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. Boom! At practically the exact same moment, this abode that was established 3 kilometers underground seemed to have suffered a terrifying bombardment, and it suddenly shook violently while the energy of the restrictions that covered the surroundings rumbled while a rain of light sprayed down, and the sound of being unable to endure such a heavy burden resounded out. Someone was coming. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. The thief is really hiding here. Get out of the way. An indifferent and cold old voice sounded outside. Boom! The earth was smashed, mud and stones splashed, and the terrible light poured down, as if to completely erase this place. The restrictive formation Lin Sun had arranged finally couldn't bear the heavy load and burst into pieces. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure broke through the air. Thief, why don't you hide? As soon as Lin Sun rushed out of the ground, a loud shout rang out, and a silver halberd chopped at his head. The destructive breath was like a falling galaxy, terrifying and boundless. Clang! Lin Sun hit the halberd with his palm, and the silver halberd shook violently. Dazzling divine light burst out between the two. At the same time, Lin Sun moved and stood far away. Only now did he clearly see that the person that attacked was an old man that was completely covered in silver armor. His hair was crimson red like fire. His eyes were like a pair of golden lanterns, and he held a bright silver halberd in his hand and possessed an extremely ferocious might. Not far from the silver-armored old man, there stood about 30 strong men, each holding a weapon, with a strong breath and dazzling light flowing all over their bodies. Thief! Was my grandson Feng Ying killed by you? The silver-armored old man looked cold and full of killing intent. The others all looked at Lin Sun. Yes. Lin Sun looked calm. He wanted to kill me, so I had to kill him. The silver-armored old man was comparable to the first level of the Emperor realm. In the eyes of others, he might be extremely powerful, but for Lin Sun hadn't paid attention to such a weak cultivator for a long time in the eternal world. It wasn't disdain or disdain. It was almost impossible to meet such a weak cultivator. The weakest cultivator in the Yuan clan was a peerless ancestor. The silver-armored old man's face turned livid when he saw Lin Sun admit it so calmly. He shouted, "You're courting death." Boom! He waved his silver halberd and moved towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't retreat. He just stood there, made a seal with his hand, and lightly punched. Clang! The silver-armored old man felt a sharp pain in his wrist. The silver halberd almost flew out of his hand. His facial expression changed. In his eyes, Lin Sun was only at the Ba Huang stage, but he could resist the power of the first level of the extreme stage. It was unbelievable. He didn't slow down. He used his full power, and the silver halberd was like a galaxy in the sky. It was raining lights as it attacked Lin Sun. I don't have time to waste with you. Lin Sun frowned and firmly grasped the silver halberd that was coming towards him. He stretched out his left hand like lightning and broke the silver-armored old man's defense. He grabbed the old man's neck and lifted him up like a chicken. He had captured an extreme stage cultivator with one strike. The all-powerful scene instantly shocked everyone present, and it caused them to be horrified and feel as if they'd fallen into an icy pit. P.S. There will be more tonight. Chapter 2874. Feng Yun's whole body was stiff. He had difficulty breathing, and his face was full of horror. He was captured with one blow. He couldn't accept it for a moment, but he still had many years of fighting experience. Almost immediately, he roared, "Send a message." The powerhouses in the distance were like waking up from a dream. They were about to take action, but it was too late. Boom! As Lin Sun waved his sleeve, the sky full of sword chi fell from the sky, dense like a storm, covering all those powerhouses. Puff after a muffled sound, scarlet flowers of blood blossomed in the snowy white sky. No one survived. Feng Yun's eyes almost popped out. "Who are you?" Lin Sun said, "An outsider." Feng Yun's eyes widened as if he was struck by lightning. The legend is true. This ninth forbidden area is really an entrance. Lin Sun said calmly, "I need to get some information from your soul. Do you mind?" Feng Yun's face was pale. "Even if I know what you want to know in this ninth forbidden area, no, in this great Qin divine realm, you will only have a dead end. This is not something you should worry about." Lin Sun said, twisted his wrist, and broke Feng Yun's neck. He grabbed Feng Yun's spirit and began to search his soul. After a long time, bang! Feng Yun's primordial spirit exploded between Lin Sun's palms and fingers, and Lin Sun looked a little excited. He finally understood. In Feng Yun's memory, a long time ago, there was an outsider who broke into the Great Qin divine realm with the Sword of Fate, and the place he appeared was this 9th forbidden area. This person ran amok in the Great Qin divine realm, and in just a few years, he stirred up the world. It was said that he came to find a treasure in the Great Qin divine realm, but on the way to find the treasure, he offended the Great Qin divine clan, so a bloody battle broke out. Later, this person left with the treasure. After many years, a man and a woman appeared in the 9th forbidden area with the Sword of Fate. Their appearance caused a sensation in the Great Qin divine realm again. The reason was that the Sword of Fate in their hands had appeared a long time ago, and they took away a treasure from the Great Qin divine realm. This attracted the attention of the Great Qin celestial clan, who sent out their forces to hunt down the man and woman. Although these memories were messy and lacked a lot of important information, Lin Sun was able to judge immediately. Back then, the one who had barged into the Great Qin divine realm with the Sword of Creation was undoubtedly my maternal great-grandfather, Luo Tongtian. Feng Yun's memories did not mention what the ultimate treasure that Luo Tongtian had taken away from the Great Qin divine realm was. However, Lin Sun vaguely guessed that the treasure was most likely the eternal coffin. Many years later, the man and woman who entered the Great Qin divine ruins with the Sword of Fortune would be his parents. How could Lin Sun not be excited when he heard the news? After calming down, Lin Sun gradually sorted out his thoughts. After his parents reached the Great Qin God domain, they had been hunted down by the Great Qin God clan. However, they had been fine, and they had been trapped in a secret realm formed by a space-time barrier. Otherwise, the mysterious man surnamed Chun would not have had the chance to help and bring the bronze box containing the Sword of Fortune and his mother's willpower out of the ruins of fortune. However, Lin Sun was still unable to confirm whether the space-time barrier where his parents were trapped was in the Great Qin divine realm. In Feng Yun's memories, there was no such information. Obviously, Feng Yun, a first-level Emperor Realm cultivator, had only heard of these things and did not know the details behind them. However, Lin Sun had obtained another important clue. A long time ago, the Great Qin God clan had sealed off the 9th forbidden area and sent a large force to be stationed here all year round. It was to wait for a rabbit to come to the Great Qin divine ruins, waiting for the day when someone would come to the Great Qin divine ruins like Luo Tongtian and Luo Qingxuan. This was the clue in Feng Yun's memories. However, what was the purpose of the Great Qin God clan doing this? Lin Sun thought for a while and vaguely guessed that they had most likely already known the relationship between his parents and his maternal great-grandfather. It was also very likely that as long as his parents were trapped in the ruins of fortune, someone would come to rescue them sooner or later. If so, the Great Qin God clan was most likely waiting for his maternal great-grandfather, Luo Tongtian. The reason was very simple. They wanted to capture his maternal great-grandfather and take away the treasure that was taken away by his maternal great-grandfather. If that treasure was the eternal coffin, then it was enough to explain why the Great Qin God clan would still send forces to wait near the 9th forbidden area after so many years had passed. The eternal coffin was too precious, enough to make any god clan yearn for it. Of course, this was only Lin Sun's own speculation. As to what the truth was, further investigation and verification were still needed. But in any case, the information from Feng Yun's memories allowed Lin Sun to determine a lot of valuable information. At least now he knew that if he wanted to find out the whereabouts of his parents, it would not be wrong to go to the Great Qin God clan. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun stood in this snowy world and gradually calmed down. The top priority was to leave the 9th forbidden area first, then find time to completely restore his cultivation, and then decide to go to the Great Qin God clan to investigate. Swish! Thinking of this, Lin Sun's figure flashed, and he dashed into the distance. Half a quarter of an hour later, Lin Sun sensed the fluctuation of restrictive power from far away. There were many buildings standing on a snow-capped mountain far away. That was one of the sentry posts stationed in the Ninth Forbidden Area. Within the 30,000 miles of the Ninth Forbidden Area, as the center, there were many similar places. Between each sentry post was covered with restrictive power, forming a tight blockade. People from the outside had no chance to enter at all. Similarly, it was extremely difficult to leave the Ninth Forbidden Area. Most importantly, there was a power of order in the restrictive power that covered the blockade. Even if a Dao Tattoo Grandmaster came, he might be able to break the restrictive power, but he would definitely alarm the power of order. In Feng Yun's memories, even those who had stepped into the realm of Venerable would be attacked by the power of order if they tried to cross the blockade. Venerable was comparable to an immortal, but these could not trap Lin Sun. He quietly moved forward and soon came to the blockade, holding up the abyssal sword cauldron in his hand. It was not difficult for Lin Sun to break the restrictive formation. It didn't take long for him to see through the mystery and walked straight into it. Soon, a fluctuation of order appeared in his field of vision, like a strange and mysterious light screen, spanning between heaven and earth. Just by looking at its aura, it was at least at the level of heaven rank. Lin Sun did not stop. He moved forward with the abyssal sword cauldron. When he touched the fluctuation of order, the Nirvana sword cauldron swept out at once and silently resisted and dissolved the fluctuation of order. Lin Sun's figure directly passed through without encountering any obstruction. Walking out of the blockade, Lin Sun felt his vision blurred, and the world suddenly changed. The vast mountains and rivers were magnificent, green and beautiful and colorful. The icy blue sun hanging above his head disappeared and was replaced by the vast green sky. It turns out that the Ninth Forbidden Area was covered by the power of order, which formed the snow-capped and white world. While Lin Sun was enlightened, he could not help but frown. Doesn't this mean that everything I did in the Ninth Forbidden Area has been spied on by the power of order? Thinking of this, Lin Sun did not dare to stay for a moment. His figure flashed and swept forward. In any case, he had to get far away from here first. Half an hour later. Oh no, Deacon Feng Yun and the others are all dead. A sharp scream resounded in front of a sentry post on the blockade line. Not long after, the experts stationed at every sentry post received the bad news. Inform the clan. The legend is true. There must be an outsider who broke into the Ninth Forbidden Area. What are you waiting for? Quickly send some people to search for traces of that outsider. All kinds of shouts rang out constantly. In next to no time, numerous figures charged into the Ninth Forbidden Area, and they seemed as if they were sweeping through it. They covered the heavens and the earth as they searched, yet they came back empty-handed. Until a few hours later, in the distance, a dazzling golden rainbow cut through the sky. It was a bald man in black, carrying an ancient sword on his back, who looked like a teenager. As soon as he arrived in front of the Ninth Forbidden Area, his terrifying aura swept out. It's a big shot of the Protoss. Many of the experts stationed nearby trembled, and they actually knelt on the ground in unison. Their faces were filled with reverence, because the bald man with the ancient sword on his back was a martial venerable from the Great Qin Divine Clan. Have you found the outsider's trace? The bald man stood under the sky with a cold look. Your Excellency, we have sent all our forces to search in the Ninth Forbidden Area. I believe we will find him soon. A strong man said in a trembling voice and cold sweat. The bald man frowned slightly and said in a cold voice, When I got the news, it was said that the outsider appeared 3 days ago. Haven't you found him until now? These words caused the nearby experts to shiver, and their hearts were filled with terror and unease. A bunch of trash. The bald man didn't bother to care about them. He went straight forward and put his right hand into the light curtain of order that blocked the sky and the earth. Suddenly, the bald man had a panoramic view of what happened in the past 3 days. From Lin Sun's appearance to his killing of Feng Ying and others, to his meditation in the underground cave residence, to being discovered by Feng Yun and others, and then fighting. Every scene was clear to the slightest detail. When they saw Lin Sun easily walk into the blockade line with the abyssal sword cauldron in his hand, all the scene seemed to be blocked by a terrible force and suddenly disappeared. The bald man's expression became gloomy little by little. How could he not see that Lin Sun had probably escaped from the Ninth Forbidden Area? He can actually avoid the blockade of the order power set up by our clan. It seems that this person came prepared. The bald man's eyes flickered. Although this person is not Luo Tongtian, he also came with the Sword of Fate. In this case, he must have a close relationship with Luo Tongtian. It has been 8 hours since he left. We must catch him as soon as possible. Otherwise, when he adapts to the power of the rules of heaven and earth in the Great Qin Divine Realm and completely recovers his strength, I'm afraid it will be even more difficult to catch him. Thinking of this, the bald man made a decision. He took out a bone talisman and threw it gently. Suddenly, it turned into a dazzling line of fire and rushed into the sky, disappearing. P.S. Additional updates. Chapter 2875. Great Qin Divine Realm. Floating Cloud World. This was where the Great Qin Divine Clan resided. In an ancient palace, Qin Jinghe, the clan leader of the Great Qin Divine Clan, was reading an ancient book. Whoosh! A fiery red light shot into the palace and turned into a bone talisman floating in the air. Qin Jinghe raised his head and pointed at the bone talisman. Buzz! With a strange ripple, the bone talisman turned into a young man in black. Clan leader, I've already investigated. The person who entered the Great Qin Divine Realm 3 days ago is most likely Luo Tongtian's descendant. As he spoke, scenes appeared. They were the scenes from when Lin Sun entered the Ninth Forbidden Zone until he left. When the light screen disappeared, the bald man cupped his hands and said, "It's very likely that this person has not adapted to the rules of heaven and earth in the Great Qin Divine Realm. He can't use his cultivation to its fullest. Clan leader, please send people to hunt this person down." With that, the bald man's figure also turned into a rain of light and dissipated. Crack! The bone talisman floating in the air also exploded. A light flickered in Qin Jinghe's eyes as excitement appeared on his face. How many years has it been? 200,000 years? 300,000 years? He couldn't remember. He only remembered that a man called Luo Tongtian broke into the Great Qin Divine Realm with the Sword of Fate and took away a treasure that should have belonged to the Great Qin Divine Clan. This had become a sore point for the Great Qin Divine Clan. For countless years, they had been waiting for the day they could take back that treasure. And now, the opportunity seemed to have come. Although that person isn't Luo Tongtian, he must have a close relationship with him. If we can capture him and obtain the Sword of Fate, we won't have to worry about not being able to kill our way out of the ruins of fate. Qin Jinghe's eyes flashed with terrifying divine flames. By then, no matter where you hide, the Great Qin Divine Clan will make you pay 100 times, 1,000 times the price. He hated, unparalleled hatred. That supreme treasure was extremely important, hiding world-shocking mysteries. Back then, because of this matter, even the Great Qin Divine Clan had suffered many storms and paid an extremely heavy price. Someone summoned the third elder, fourth elder, and fifth elder. Qin Jinghe said in a deep voice. His voice reverberated throughout the hall. Not long after, the third elder Qin Jingtian, the fourth elder Qin Jingwen, and the fifth elder Qin Jinglu appeared in the hall. Luo Tongtian's descendant has appeared. If I'm not mistaken, his descendant has come to rescue Luo Qingxuan and her husband, who are trapped in the flowing light Forbidden Zone. Patriarch Qin Jinghe went straight to the point and told them the news he had just received. The three elders immediately revealed expressions of excitement. How many years has it been? Has Luo Tongtian finally remembered that his daughter and son-in-law are still trapped in the ruins of fortune? Third elder Qin Jingtian said coldly. His voice was filled with mockery and excitement. Why didn't Luo Tongtian come personally? Fourth elder Qin Jingwen frowned. I wish for nothing more than to kill that old geezer. If it wasn't for him seizing that precious treasure all those years ago, then how could our clan have been implicated? His voice was filled with undisguised hatred. Does the patriarch intend to send the three of us out to capture this person? The fifth elder, Qin Jinglu, asked in a deep voice. That's right. Patriarch Qin Jingha nodded. Although Luo Tontian didn't come, since this person dared to come with the Sword of Fortune, he must not be underestimated. Right now, this person hasn't completely adapted to the laws of heaven and earth of the Great Qin Divine Realm. This is the best time to capture him. I hope the three of you can go out and capture this person as soon as possible. The three elders agreed without hesitation. Remember, don't leak the news. Patriarch Qin Jingha hesitated for a moment before saying, don't forget that there are people from the other three top-notch clan station near the flowing light Forbidden Zone. If they find out about this, things will be bad. The three elders' eyes flickered. Ever since the news of that precious treasure had been leaked, it had caused a great commotion in the ruins of fortune. It had also attracted the attention of the God Clan in the epic world. Moreover, because of this matter, the Great Qin Divine Clan had become the target of public criticism and had been greatly implicated. In order to resolve the dispute, they had to pay a great price. Although the flowing light Forbidden Zone that bound Luo Qingxuan and her husband was discovered by the Great Qin Divine Clan, the three top-notch clans had been keeping an eye on it for countless years. Obviously, the three top-notch clans had their eyes on that precious treasure and were unwilling to give it up easily. Go, there's no time to lose. Let's solve it quickly. Patriarch Qin Jingha urged. On that day, the Great Qin Divine Clan left the floating clouds world with 3 second-level ultimate God Realm elders. The Great Qin Divine Realm was vast with countless mountains, rivers, cities, and billions of living beings living in it. The Tao fire was at its peak and was not inferior to the seventh heaven at all. Condensing Cloud City. In a bustling city more than 100,000 miles away from the ninth Forbidden Zone. After leaving the ninth Forbidden Zone, he trekked all the way and saw many cities and villages along the way. It wasn't until a day later that he entered Condensing Cloud City. The city was bustling with shops. Cultivators could be seen coming and going. Apart from the cultivation civilization and cultivation system, there wasn't much difference between it and the eternal true world. Boss, I need some ancient books related to our Great Qin Divine Realm. After wandering in the city for a while, Lin Sun walked straight into a shop that specialized in selling all kinds of ancient books related to cultivation. Please wait a moment, sir. The shopkeeper was very enthusiastic, and it didn't take long for him to collect dozens of jade slips. These are all the books that you need. There are maps of mountains and rivers, maps of territories, scrolls that describe the history of our Great Qin Divine Realm. And, before he finished, Lin Sun interrupted, I want all of them. The shopkeeper was startled and said, Sir, although these ancient books are not precious, they are still valuable. Lin Sun directly threw a storage bag over. Is this enough? The shopkeeper opened it, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He smiled happily. More than enough. Lin Sun smiled and put away the jade slips. The storage bag contained some of the spoils of war Lin Sun obtained after killing Feng Yun, Feng Ying, and other enemies in the ninth Forbidden Zone. For him, it was not of much use, but could buy some things he urgently needed. Shopkeeper, do you know where I should go if I want to inquire about information? Lin Sun asked casually. The shopkeeper smiled mysteriously. Of course, it is the Wind Smell Pavilion. As long as you can pay the price, I guarantee that you will find out everything you want to know. Lin Sun cupped his fists and said thank you. He turned around and left. The Wind Smell Pavilion was very easy to find. It was located in the busy area of the city. A quarter of an hour later, Lin Sun walked out of the Wind Smell Pavilion. He frowned slightly, shook his head, and left straight away. In the Wind Smell Pavilion, he didn't find out anything he wanted to know. This made Lin Sun realize that any information related to the Great Qin Divine Clan was destined to be difficult to find out. However, this trip also had other gains. In the Great Qin Divine Realm, there was a transmission formation. Through this formation, one could leave the Great Qin Divine Ruins and go to other epochs in the Ruins of Fate. However, this formation had been controlled by the Great Qin Divine Clan since ancient times. If one wanted to borrow it, he had to pay a huge amount of wealth, or he could get a nameplate given by the Great Qin Divine Clan. This kind of nameplate could only be obtained by those great forces that served the Great Qin Divine Clan. Ordinary cultivators couldn't get it at all. When my strength recovers, I'll go to the transmission formation and have a look. Lin Sun secretly made a decision. According to the information he obtained, the ancestors of the Great Qin Divine Clan did have a martial god who was comparable to the Eternal Realm. However, that was in the past and belonged to the past. In the current Great Qin Divine Clan, the highest cultivation was only the third level of martial venerable realm, which was equivalent to the transcendent realm. Even so, the Great Qin Divine Clan was still worthy of being the overlord of this world. Even the Eighth Heaven's immortal giants were slightly inferior in terms of foundation. On the same day, Lin Sun left Ningxia City. On the way, he had already read all kinds of ancient books he bought from the city, and finally had a comprehensive understanding of the Great Qin Divine Realm. Most importantly, he already knew that the Great Qin Divine Clan was located in the Floating Clouds world. However, Lin Sun wouldn't rashly go there unless he had no other choice. With his current cultivation, even if he completely recovered to his previous peak, go to the Great Qin Divine Clan was no different from courting death. However, Lin Sun wasn't in a hurry. He had a hunch that when the news of him breaking out of the Ninth Forbidden Zone was known, the Great Qin Divine Clan would definitely send forces to find him. This was undoubtedly an opportunity. As long as he could capture the big figures in the opponent's camp, it would be enough to get the information he wanted to know. For Lin Sun, the most important thing now was to recover his cultivation as soon as possible. The Seventh Forbidden Zone. Lin Sun held a jade slip in his hand, which recorded the landscape map of the Great Qin Divine Realm. In it, there was a place called the Seventh Forbidden Zone, 80,000 miles away from Ningxue City. Unlike the Ninth Forbidden Area, since the ancient times, the Seventh Forbidden Area had been a place where calamities occurred frequently, and it was filled with all sorts of dangers and terror. Ordinary people didn't dare to enter it. But for Lin Sun, the Seventh Forbidden Zone was undoubtedly an extremely suitable place for cultivation. Hiding in it, those dangerous disasters could become a kind of shelter instead. Let's go there. Lin Sun made a decision and immediately took action. 2 hours later, when Lin Sun's figure shuttled through the sky above a golden desert, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart and stopped. Boom! Almost at the same time, in the distant sky, a dazzling divine rainbow fell and turned into a thin figure. It was a bald man in black who looked like a young man. He carried an ancient sword on his back and looked aloof. The aura emitted from his body was earth-shattering and not weaker than the immortals of Heaven Longevity Realm. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't panic, but he was very puzzled. How did the opponent find him in such a short time? Along the way, he hid his tracks and restrained his aura, never leaving any traces. Qin Xiaoming of the Great Qin Divine Clan. In the distance, the bald man in black put his hands behind his back and stared at Lin Sun with sharp eyes. He said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, kneel down and surrender." His words were calm and indifferent. P.S. Second watch before 7:30, and we'll continue to update tonight. Chapter 2876. If you don't want to die, kneel down and surrender. It was a casual sentence, but the contempt in it was obvious. Lin Sun hadn't been threatened like this for many years. He raised his eyebrows and nodded. That's right. This is the world of the Great Qin clan. It's not strange for them to act like this. You think I'm arrogant? That's because you don't know the truth. In the distance, Qin Xiaoming looked calm. No matter how strong you were before, now you're just a nobody in the Bahuang province. The Bahuang province was equivalent to an emperor-to-be. Lin Sun understood what Qin Xiaoming meant. He smiled and said, "Then why don't you attack me? A man who dares to come to the Great Qin clan with the Sword of Fate must be well prepared. Maybe you haven't adapted to the rules of this world yet, but you might have a trump card," said Qin Xiaoming. "I won't make a mistake like this." Lin Sun asked, "Then what are you going to do?" "Wait," Qin Xiaoming said casually. When those elders of my clan arrive, even if you have a trump card in your hands, you will no longer be a threat. But what if I want to leave now? Asked Lin's son. I might not be able to stop your trump card, but I can retreat and catch up with you. Do you think you can win? Qin Xiaoming looked like he had everything planned out and was very confident. I have to say that you're a smart man, said Lin's son. In that case, I won't leave. Why don't we have some time to talk? Young Master Qin frowned. He could see that Lin's son seemed to be extremely confident without any trace of panic, which made him a little puzzled for a while. What do you want to talk about? Asked Qin Xiaoming. How did you find me? Asked Lin's son. Qin Xiaoming said expressionlessly, There's no one in the world that the great Qin clan can't find. Lin Sun said with a smile, That's nonsense. Qin Xiaoming said, If you tell me your name, your relationship with Luo Tongtian, and why you came to the great Qin clan, I don't mind telling you. Lin Sun nodded quickly. Lin Sun, Luo Tongtian, is my great-grandfather. I'm here to rescue my trapped parents. As he spoke, under his gaze, Qin Xiaoming's expression changed subtly. There was no shock or surprise, but an expression of realization. This made Lin Sun immediately conclude that this guy knew that his parents were trapped. It's your turn, Lin Sun said calmly. Qin Xiaoming said, There's no harm in telling you. Anyone who appears in the 9th Forbidden Zone will have their aura memorized by my tribe's order force. As long as you possess an order artifact, no matter how you try to conceal your aura, it will still be able to sense and capture your tracks. Lin Sun's heart sank. That explained it. This also meant that even if he killed Qin Xiaoming, the great Qin Divine Clan would still be able to use the Order's secret treasure in their hands to track him down on the way. Unless the energy of order that enveloped the area around the 9th Forbidden Area was completely destroyed. Thinking of this, Lin Sun was a little tempted. The forces stationed around the 9th Forbidden Zone were not much of a threat, and the great Qin God Clan already knew that he had escaped from the 9th Forbidden Zone. Under such circumstances, who would be able to guess that he would return? Who could know that the Order Nirvana in his hands could easily destroy the energy of order in the 9th Forbidden Area? You really don't want to try and run away? Or could it be that the trump card in your hand gives you the confidence to deal with the upcoming crisis? Said Qin Xiaoming calmly. Lin Sun smiled and said, Just like you said, it's useless to run away. Why should I run away? Qin Xiaoming frowned. He couldn't understand Lin Sun's background. Normally, he could crush a cultivator from the Bahuang province. He didn't care about them at all. But Lin Sun was different. He wasn't from the real Bahuang province. He hadn't adapted to the rules of the world yet. Besides, he had dared to come to the sacred region of the Qin Divine Region, so he must have a trump card to protect himself. That was why Qin Xiaoming couldn't understand Lin Sun. Let's see if I'm bluffing or not. Do you dare to take my attack? Said Qin Xiaoming. Lin Sun said casually, You're a smart man. I suggest you don't risk your life. Qin Xiaoming remained silent. I have a trump card too. It's not impossible for me to block your attack. After a while, Qin Xiaoming raised his head and looked at Lin Sun coldly. When Qin Xiaoming spoke, whoosh! Suddenly, a ray of sword qi appeared out of nowhere and moved towards Lin Sun at an incredible speed. From the beginning until the end, young Master Qin stood towering on the spot without the slightest movement, and it gave others the feeling that this sword strike was utterly not made by him. It was precisely because of this that it seemed sudden, terrifying, and impossible to guard against. Bang! This wisp of sword qi exploded in front of Lin and was easily crushed by a slender and broad hand. The owner of that hand was Xian Failing's Dharma. Is this the good fortune ruins? What a special rule of heaven and earth. Xian Failing sighed. It's a pity that my original body is not here. Otherwise, I can meditate here. Maybe it will help me break through the eternal realm. The Dharma will condense the power and consciousness of a cultivator. But as long as the power was exhausted, it would dissipate. Xian Failing was a transcendent realm great perfection. The Dharma of will condensed by him was naturally powerful. Qin Xiaoming's pupil shrank. A Dharma of will, of divine, venerable, 3rd level. Senior, this is one of the great Qin realm's relics of the good fortune order. More importantly, Can you get rid of that eyesore in front first? Lin Sun felt helpless. Xian Failing's Dharma laughed. Don't worry. It's just a punch. As he said, he waved his fist. Bang! In the distance, divine light exploded. A golden edict that Qin Xiaoming had placed in front of him exploded under this punch. Under the impact, Qin Xiaoming's figure was shaken and flew backward. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose. He couldn't care about anything else. He immediately teleported to escape. He was already extremely shocked in his heart. The golden talisman was also his trump card. It contained a powerful order power, but it was destroyed by a punch. Oomph. Xian Failing's Dharma of will was embarrassed that he couldn't kill Qin Xiaoming with one punch. He snorted and waved his fist again. No dash. Don't kill. Qin Xiaoming screamed at the same time as Lin Sun, but it was too late. Boom! In the distant sky, Qin Xiaoming's body exploded like a scarlet firework blooming there. It was sad and beautiful. Following that, the blood mist also dissipated into thin air. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. He wanted to capture Qin Xiaoming and find out where his parents were trapped. But obviously, he couldn't do that now. He's just a small fry. So be it. Xian Failing said disapprovingly. Lin Sun suddenly realized something and said, Senior, why is your Dharma will not be suppressed by the rules of this world? What is transcendence? It is above the great way, beyond the rules of this world. At that time, the unique power of the great way in an era can no longer restrain your cultivation. Xian Failing said casually, when you reach the transcendent realm, you will understand. At this moment, there was a whistling sound in the distance. Then, 3 figures appeared out of thin air. They were the 3rd elder Qin Jingtian, the 4th elder Qin Jingwen, and the 5th elder Qin Jinlu. Qin Xiaoming was killed. Qin Jingtian's face turned pale as he glanced around. He looked at Lin Sun and Xian Failing's Dharma of will. It seems that you did it. A Dharma of will of the 3rd level of Martial Venerable. This is this person's trump card. Qin Jingwen's eyes flickered with murderous intent. Cut! Qin Jinglu was more direct and attacked immediately. A sword emitting dazzling silver light tore the sky and slashed towards Xian Failing's Dharma of will. That sword was imprinted with an obscure and terrifying power of order. Obviously, although Qin Jinglu was angry, he also knew that he had to use his trump card to deal with Xian Failing's Dharma of will. Xian Failing frowned, grabbed Lin Sun's shoulder, and dodged the blow without danger. At the same time, he quickly sent a telepathic message. They've obviously come with all sorts of trump cards. They're not afraid of the power of my Dharma idol. If it's just one of them, it'll be fine. But if 3 of them come at me together, I'm afraid I won't be able to get rid of them, even if I use all the power of my Dharma idol. Senior, don't say more. Let's run first. Lin Sun said quickly. Okay. Xian Failing nodded. Boom. The next moment, he turned into a light and moved away with Lin Sun. It's impossible to escape. Qin Jingtian and others directly chased after him. Thus, a pursuit began. On the way, Lin Sun transmitted his voice quickly. Senior, there's a place called the 7th Forbidden Area 80,000 miles away from here. There may be a chance to turn things around. Damn it, I haven't been chased by people in Nirvana Realm for a long time. If I didn't use the power of my Dharma of will this time, I wouldn't be so embarrassed. Xian Failing was annoyed, but immediately reminded, Boy, don't use the power of will left by Tai Xian Old Monster at this time. It's too wasteful and not cost-effective. If you don't meet some old guys in Transcendent Realm, you won't be worthy of Tai Xian Old Monster. As he spoke, he moved the void at an amazing speed. In the blink of an eye, he was thousands of miles away. Behind him, Qin Jingtian and others followed closely. Although they couldn't catch up with him for a while, their speed was extremely amazing. Senior, let's go to the 7th Forbidden Area first. When my cultivation recovers, we can fight together. At that time, it will be easy to kill these 3 old guys. Lin Sun transmitted his voice quickly. He had a lot of trump cards in his hand. For example, Abyssal Sword Cauldron, Time Blade, Door of Exile, and so on. Even Xia Ji could unleash a kind of heaven-defying forbidden power with him, which was enough to defeat the opponent in one fell swoop. Back then, the evil god Tishi was beaten by him and Xie Ji into a young dog egg. But these trump cards couldn't be used now, because the cultivation he could use now was only at the quasi-emperor realm. Even if he used time restriction, it was very likely that it wouldn't have any effect. That's the only way. Fortunately, it's just an escape. It doesn't consume much of the power of my dharma of will. I can still support it for a while. Xian Feiling's voice was depressed. He was a transcendent realm great perfection. In the eternal true world, he dared to ignore the threat of the top 10 giants in the 8th heaven. But now, he was only a dharma of will, but he was being chased by 3 nirvana realm characters. This feeling made Xian Feiling feel like a dragon trapped in a shoal. Chapter 2877. The 7th Forbidden Zone. The broken space-time turbulence turned into a storm, raging and rolling. In the distance, Qin Jingtian and others stopped with gloomy expressions. With their realm, they didn't dare to rush into the space-time turbulence. When they chased after Lin Sun and Xian Feiling, they hid in a sword cauldron and rushed into the space-time turbulence, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Damn it! Qin Jingtian was full of anger. Will this person die in there? If that's the case, wouldn't our mission be considered a failure? Qin Jingwen frowned. No. Qin Jinglu took a deep breath. If they knew that they would die, they would choose to fight with us, but they didn't. This undoubtedly proves that they are confident that they can resist the impact of the space-time turbulence. Hearing this, Qin Jingtian and Qin Jingwen also calmed down. Jingwen, go to the place where Xiaoming died and use the power of order reversal to investigate the previous battle. See if you can find some useful information. Qin Jingtian made a decision. Jinglu, send a message back to the clan and tell the patriarch what happened. Ask him to send people here to block all the entrances of the 7th Forbidden Zone. As for me, I'll stay here. Yes. Qin Jingwen and Qin Jinglu took the order and left. Half an hour later, Qin Jingwen returned and said, before Xiaoming died, he asked about that person's identity. His name is Lin Sun, the great-grandson of Luo Tongtian. This time, he came to the Great Qin Divine Realm to rescue Luo Qingxuan and her husband who were trapped in the flowing light Forbidden Zone. Lin Sun. Qin Jingtian silently remembered this name. That night, Qin Jinglu also returned with a large number of experts from the 9 great forces under the command of the Great Qin Divine Clan. The clan leader has said that we cannot mobilize a large amount of the clan's power. Otherwise, it is extremely likely that we will attract the attention of the 3 top god clans. Hence, we have mobilized the experts from the 9 forces under our clan. Qin Jinglu said, the 9 forces each sent a level 1 martial venerable with 300 clansmen. Now, they have completely blocked the entrance of the 7th Forbidden Zone. After hearing that, Qin Jingtian felt much more at ease. He asked, have you released the news to the public? Qin Jinglu smiled. In order to avoid attracting the attention of the outside world, I've already spread the news that we're entering the 7th Forbidden Zone to capture an enemy. I've also fabricated an impeccable reason. I believe that even if the outside world finds out, they won't be able to guess what we're doing. That's good. Qin Jingtian nodded. If he doesn't come out, are we going to keep wasting time here? Asked Qin Jinglu. I've been observing this place for a long time. The position of this space-time storm isn't fixed. Instead, it will change every once in a while. Qin Jingtian pointed into the distance. According to my deductions, in less than half a year, we will have the opportunity to avoid this chaotic flow of space-time and enter the place where that kid disappeared. Half a year. I'm afraid it's enough for Lin Sun to recover completely. Qin Jinglu frowned. No matter how strong he is, he can't be that strong. Didn't you see his trump card? Is the will of a rank 3 martial honorable? This also means that it is impossible for him to have reached the rank 3 martial honorable realm. Qin Jingtian said calmly. Qin Jinglu nodded and said, that's right. If he had reached the rank 3 martial honorable realm, he wouldn't have been suppressed and rejected by the rules of heaven and earth. This is enough to prove that his strength is equal to ours at most. The strongest was only the rank 2 martial honorable realm. What was there to be afraid of? On a desolate star, there were undulating mountains. Lin Sun sat cross-legged and meditated on the rules of heaven and earth. Although the space-time storm was terrible, it couldn't tear up the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun passed through the space-time storm safely and came to the depths of the 7th Forbidden Zone. There were many desolate and broken stars scattered here. It was dark and silent. Xian Failing's Dharma form had returned to his token. Perhaps stimulated by the strong sense of crisis, Lin Sun's state of mind and consciousness were unprecedentedly focused, ethereal, and clear when he meditated. In just 7 days, his qi recovered to the rank 1 martial emperor realm. Moreover, as he continued to meditate and experience, his understanding of the rules of heaven and earth in the great Qin realm became more and more profound. The birth of a brand new era of civilization was enough to prove how extraordinary the rules of heaven and earth in the great Qin realm were. Lin Sun also gained a lot of experience and gains that he had never had before. This is a very strange feeling. It wasn't like practicing again, but it gave him more insights than practicing again. Several months passed in a hurry. Lin Sun's qi would improve by a level almost every once in a while. Half a year later, Qin Jingtian, who had been waiting anxiously for a long time, suddenly showed a touch of joy. He let out a long breath and said, "It's done." In half a year, the space-time storm in the distance had deviated a lot. It was just enough for them to pass through the place where Lin Sun disappeared. Qin Jingwen and Qin Jinglu looked at each other and felt refreshed. "Let's go. I'd like to see where he can escape to this time. Remember, when you attack later, don't give the Dharma form a chance to escape. We must kill him with one blow and end the battle quickly." Qin Jingtian was full of murderous intent and took the lead to fly away. Qin Jingwen and Qin Jinglu followed closely behind. All of them had withdrawn formidable trump cards in their hands. There was a green-colored Dao bell that revolved as it floated in midair, a gorgeous jade scepter that flowed with multicolored flowing lights, and a Dao sword that was suffused with a chilly silver glow. Each of them was branded with a terrifying forbidden aura, which was the power of the great Qin divine clan and could threaten a LV3 martial venerable. Now, it was more than enough to deal with the Dharma form of a LV3 martial venerable. In fact, in the entire great Qin realm, there were very few people who were qualified to fight with the 3 elders at the same time. To be more precise, they hadn't fought like this for a long time. The reason was very simple. The great Qin realm was the territory of the Qin clan. In this world, they were the gods in the eyes of billions of creatures. Who had the gall to provoke them? Only the top divine clans and other epochs could suppress them. But at least in the great Qin realm, they were like the gods. Over there. Soon, Qin Jingtian and the others' divine senses captured a barren star, and Lin Sun's figure was sitting cross-legged in it. Instantly, their murderous intent surged. Clang! A green bell rang out in Qin Jingtian's hand, and it emanated rings of sound waves that seemed like burning flames that spread into the distance. Everywhere the sound wave passed, the scattered remnants of the stars silently transformed into ashes and vanished, and even space was melted to reveal horrifying rifts and black holes. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged, stood up and disappeared. The star fragment he had been on had also been reduced to ashes the moment he left. In the void, Lin Sun's sleeves fluttered, and his black eyes were cold. Behind him, the immortal divine ring rotated slowly, attracting obscure and mysterious fluctuations of the immortal law. At this moment, his strength had already recovered to its peak, and at the same time, he had reached the great completion of the heavenly longevity realm. However, such an aura was not a threat to Qin Jingtian and the others in the distance. The cultivation of the first level of martial venerable. It seems that we overestimated him. Qin Jinglu said indifferently. Previously, they thought that Lin Sun was at the second level of martial venerable at most. Obviously, Lin Sun was only at the first level of martial venerable. Young man, quickly use that Dharma form of will, or you won't have a chance. Qin Jingtian said coldly. The trump card in their hands was not to deal with Lin Sun. I can deal with the three of you by myself, Lin Sun said, and his figure flashed in the air. He activated the abyssal sword cauldron and rushed over. Boom! The void shook, and hundreds of millions of lights flowed, making Lin Sun's power extremely shocking. But this scene surprised Qin Jingtian and the others. They could not imagine how a character at the first level of martial venerable dared to act so recklessly. Don't kill him. Capture him alive, Qin Jingtian said, and his sleeves fluttered, and he reached out to grab Lin Sun. It was simple and direct, and the power was extremely tyrannical. Qin Jingwen and Qin Jinglu did not move, and they were waiting. They were waiting for Lin Sun to use the Dharma form of will. In the final analysis, they did not care about Lin Sun at all, and they were too lazy to use their trump cards on Lin Sun. What they cared about was Xin Feiling's Dharma form of will. But it was precisely because of this contempt and carelessness that Lin Sun had a chance to take advantage of. He did not intend to hold back and decided to end the battle quickly, because there was only one chance. Once the opponent was vigilant, it would take some effort to kill him. Lin Sun did not want to waste time. He was not sure how many enemies there were in the 7th Forbidden Zone. So what he needed to do now was to end the battle quickly. Swish! The moment Qin Jingtian made his move, a vast expanse of white light of time suddenly spread. Forbidden time. The world suddenly became still. At the same time, a sharp light swept out from Lin Sun's fingertips. The time and space here seemed to be cut, and everything showed a kind of exhaustion and collapse. The rules of time distributed between heaven and earth were completely disordered. The third stage of Forbidden Time Blade, when all the lights and shadows disappeared. In the distance, Qin Jingtian still kept the action of reaching out his hand, but the power he released was not threatening at all, like that of a king in the longevity tribulation realm. Qin Jingwen and Qin Jinglu stood still, waiting for the attack. But the appearance of them and Qin Jingtian changed at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, they turned into 3 young boys with immature faces, and their cultivation directly fell from the 2nd level of martial venerable realm, which was comparable to the nirvana realm, to the 6 directions realm, which was comparable to the longevity tribulation realm. All of these changes happened in the blink of an eye. The sudden and unexpected event caused them to be stunned on the spot. Their expressions were gradually replaced by terror and frustration, and their entire bodies started to tremble uncontrollably. How could it be? Qin Jingtian cried out, as if he had gone mad. No, it's impossible. How could it be? Qin Jingwen murmured, lost. The power of time. This is the legendary forbidden power that belongs to that supreme treasure. Yang Qi murmured. Qin Jinglu was the only one who remained relatively calm. However, his complexion had completely changed. He seemed to know what kind of power Lin Sun had displayed, but it was hard for him to accept it. If it were anyone else, it would be difficult for him to bear the blow if he suddenly returned to his youth and lost almost all his cultivation. It was too cruel. The higher one's cultivation was, the more difficult it was to bear such a price. Yu Fengzi, the successor of Zen's sect, was like this, and so were Qin Jingtian and the other 2 at this moment. Lin Sun had come forward, stretched out his hand and patted Qin Jingtian's youthful cheek, saying, "If you had tried to kill me at the first moment, perhaps all of this wouldn't have happened so smoothly. Of course, you probably wouldn't have thought that someone like me, whom you've underestimated, would possess such power. So much so that it's already too late for you to salvage the situation." Clap, clap, clap. Her palms gently patted Qin Jingtian's face again and again. Her casual voice made Qin Jingtian feel an unprecedented sense of humiliation. More chapters. Chapter 2878. I'll kill you. Stimulated by the strong humiliation, Qin Jingtian slapped Lin Sun's head furiously. However, He had forgotten that he was only a 6 Unity Realm cultivator and was no longer a level 2 martial honorable who could do as he pleased. Crack! Lin Sun stood there without moving, but Qin Jingtian's wrist was shattered. Blood splattered everywhere, and the intense pain made Lin Sun realize the reality. This is the great Qin realm. You can't leave here alive if you kill us. Qin Jingtian hissed with bloodshot eyes. Then I'll send you to hell first. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. With a bang, Qin Jingtian's figure turned into ashes and vanished without a trace. Not far away, Qin Jingwen and Qin Jinglu looked numb as if they had lost their parents. Remorse was eroding their hearts like a poisonous snake. A moment ago, they didn't take Lin Sun seriously. After a while, they fell into the abyss like gods in the sky. If they had taken action earlier and captured Lin Sun at the first time, how could such a shocking change happen? In the final analysis, they didn't expect that Lin Sun had mastered such a forbidden and heaven-defying power. Reversing time and depriving their cultivation was such a great blow that their state of mind was about to collapse. You want to save your parents? Qin Jinglu suddenly raised his head and looked at Lin Sun. Of course, said Lin Sun. I can help you. Qin Jinglu took a deep breath. I can even ask my Qin clan to help you save your parents, as long as you give us a chance to live. Want to live? Even ants are greedy for life, let alone cultivators like us. Qin Jinglu said calmly. Then how are you going to help me? Asked Lin Sun. Qin Jinglu said without hesitation. Your parents are trapped in the flowing light restricted area. In these countless years, the outside of the flowing light restricted area has been heavily sealed off. It's absolutely impossible for you to have any chance to rescue your parents with your strength. Forbidden land of flowing light. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly. But if you have my clan's help, we can create a chance for you to save your parents. Otherwise, even if you master the forbidden power of time, it will be useless. Qin Jinglu said calmly. How can I believe you? Lin Sun was deep in thought. Qin Jinglu's heart shook, and he realized that a turning point might have come. He pondered for a moment and said, to tell you the truth, there are 3 other top God race forces guarding outside the flowing light forbidden zone. They are the Cloud Shadow Era's deity Clan Yin Clan, the Prime Clear Era's deity Clan Yin Clan, and the Royal Way Era's Lianxiu Clan. These 3 great god clans can be ranked in the top 10 in the ruins of creation. They're top-notch god clans with terrifying figures of the martial god stage guarding their clans. Compared to them, our Qin clan can only be considered a second-rate god clan. Moreover, our Qin clan has enmity with them, but because we are weaker than them, we have no choice but to obey their orders. Hearing this, Lin Sun's brows rose up, and he said, my parents were trapped, but it alarmed your Qin clan and the other 3 top god clans. Why is that? There was a complicated look in Qin Jinglu's eyes. Didn't your maternal great-grandfather, Luo Tongtian, tell you how important the supreme treasure he took away from the great Qin divine realm is to the gods in the ruins of fortune? Lin said. Coffin Lin Sun frowned. Yes. Qin Jinglu nodded. This treasure is of great significance and contains shocking mysteries. It is said that the biggest secret of the ruins of creation is hidden in it. The person who obtains this treasure will be able to become the true overlord of the ruins of creation, and over 100 years of civilization will have to submit beneath him. Lin Sun was enlightened. Of course, this is just a legend. Since ancient times, the coffin of eternity has been like a legend. Few people have seen its true appearance. Moreover, even the divine clans in the ruins of creation can only speculate that the coffin of eternity contains the forbidden power related to time, fate, and cause and effect. Qin Jinglu said, but no one can be sure whether the biggest secret of the ruins of creation is hidden in it. No one can be sure whether the treasure can really dominate the ruins of creation. The only thing that can be concluded is that the coffin of eternity must exist. Speaking of this, a deep bitterness and disappointment appeared on his face. But who would have thought that the legendary coffin of eternity would appear in our great Qin divine realm? He clenched his fists tightly. Lin Sun said indifferently, "Although the treasure appeared in your territory, it was taken away by my maternal great-grandfather. This made you so angry that you almost went crazy, right?" Qin Jinglu's expression was uncertain. "Yes, my clan did hate you very much back then, but we also paid a great price for it." "What price?" asked Lin Sun. Qin Jinglu said in a low voice, "The news that the coffin of eternity appeared in the great Qin divine realm soon caused a sensation in the entire ruins of creation. All the divine clans came to the great Qin divine realm in an attempt to fight for the treasure. But the treasure was taken away by your maternal great-grandfather at that time. It was impossible for a second one to appear. But those divine clans wouldn't let it go so easily. They suspected that the Qin clan had stolen the treasure and deliberately made up a reason to deceive them." Qin Jinglu's expression was gloomy and ugly, revealing unconcealable anger. But Lin Sun almost burst out laughing. The great Qin clan was made a scapegoat for no reason. It was really a case of people sitting at home, but the scapegoat fell from the sky. Taking a deep breath, Qin Jinglu said, "At that time, the Qin clan became the target of public criticism. We couldn't defend ourselves and suffered a great loss under the torment of those divine clans. We paid a great price to resolve the storm." Lin Sun said, "So you put all the blame on my maternal great-grandfather?" Qin Jinglu's expression froze. "Well, not really." Lin Sun said, "You haven't answered me yet. How can I believe that you can really help me?" Qin Jinglu said, "The three top divine clans are your obstacles and also the enemies of the Qin clan. This means that we have a common enemy." Lin Sun sneered, "Liar. If what you said is true, do you dare to lower your defense? And let me check your soul." Qin Jinglu's expression changed. Bang! Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Qin Jingwen, who had been standing on one side, suddenly turned into flying ash and dissipated. This scene of death made Qin Jinglu's eyes red. He said angrily, "I said that the Qin clan can help you. Why did you kill me? I'm afraid that even you don't believe that I can fight against the three top divine clans alone. In this case, how can your clan help me at the risk of offending the three top divine clans?" Lin Sun said indifferently, "Or it's just a delaying tactic. If I really believe it, I may be killed by your clan before I reach the so-called flowing light forbidden zone." Qin Jinglu was stunned. His face turned pale, and he said, "If you don't believe it from the beginning, why do you still talk so much nonsense?" Lin Sun said, "I thought you could give me a surprise, but now it seems that I think too much." As he said, he suddenly put his hand on Qin Jinglu's shoulder, and his eyes were cold. "Do you want to kill yourself? Well, after I search your soul, it doesn't matter how you die." At this moment, Qin Jinglu's body was stiff. His whole body was imprisoned, and his face was gloomy. As Lin Sun said, he did intend to commit suicide so that he could avoid the fate of being searched by Lin Sun. But he didn't expect that Lin Sun's reaction was so sharp that he was restrained just as he was about to kill himself. Boom! The next moment, Qin Jinglu only felt that his soul was shaken as if it was being torn apart. After a quarter of an hour, only then did the boundless pain disappear like the tide. "Now, you can kill yourself." Lin Sun patted Qin Jinglu's shoulder and said casually. Qin Jinglu's face was pale, and his eyes were lifeless. He said, "I used to see my enemies curse or threaten me before they died. I always felt it was ridiculous. Is cursing useful? Is threatening useful? Why is it that even though they know that all of this is useless, so many people still behave in such a pathetic manner when they are on the verge of death? Now, when it's my turn, I can't wait to curse you to be burned to ashes, and I can't wait to use all kinds of means to threaten you. In the final analysis, it's because I'm not reconciled." Qin Jinglu let out a long sigh. Suddenly, he laughed. "Lin Sun, I'd like to know whether you will be so miserable when you die." "It's a pity that you can't see that moment," Lin Sun said calmly. Qin Jinglu was stunned and said absent-mindedly, "It's not a pity. It's better to die than to be deprived of my cultivation. At least I won't be so unwilling and helpless." His voice gradually became low and disappeared. On the other hand, his body melted like a block of ice, dispersing bit by bit until it vanished. So far, 3 elders at the second level of martial venerable realm of the Great Qin clan had died here. If this matter was spread out, it would cause a great disturbance in the Great Qin realm. But in the 7th forbidden area, at least at this moment, Lin Sun was the only one who knew about it. He didn't sigh with emotion and began to clean up the battlefield. The 3 elders of the Great Qin clan were extremely rich, but unfortunately, there was nothing useful for Lin Sun. After doing all this, Lin Sun didn't leave in a hurry. He sat cross-legged in meditation, recovering the power consumed by the forbidden passing and the blade of time, and sorting out all kinds of information collected from Qin Jinglu's spirit. Finally, Lin Sun confirmed one thing. The flowing light forbidden area was located in the depths of a chaotic starry sky outside the Great Qin realm. Nearly 200 years ago, his parents were trapped in it. From then on, the forces of the 3 top clans and the Great Qin clan were stationed outside the flowing light forbidden area, forming a heavy blockade. On this point, Qin Jinglu didn't lie before. In addition, Lin Sun also knew that the Great Qin clan deliberately covered up the news of their action against him, so that the other 3 top clans were not alarmed. The ultimate purpose of their action was to take back the Eternal Coffin, or to take the Eternal Coffin for themselves. Chapter 2879. In addition, Lin Sun also learned that there was a blockade line formed by 9 major forces outside the 7th Forbidden Zone. There were 9 heavenly longevity, realm, martial, honorables guarding the place. 10 minutes later, Lin Sun got up from meditation and walked out of the 7th Forbidden Zone. With his current cultivation base, he would consume about 30% of his power after using the Time Blade and the Time Restriction Divine ability in a row. In other words, with his current cultivation base, he could only use the Blade of Time 3 times at most. But it was enough. The key to a divine ability like this was to come out of nowhere and catch the enemy off guard. Once the enemy was alert, it would be difficult to succeed. Therefore, it couldn't be used easily. But if it was used, it must be used at the right time to kill. Someone is coming out. No, it's not the 3 elders of the Qin Divine Clan. Be careful. Outside the 7th Forbidden Zone, there was a burst of surprised voices from all directions. Taking a closer look, there were densely packed figures of experts stationed in different directions, and there were 300 people in each camp. Obviously, they were the strong figures of the 9 major forces. In their sight, in the dark and dangerous 7th Forbidden Zone, a figure walked out slowly. His clothes and black hair were fluttering, and his body was surrounded by wisps of divine aura. He didn't hide his tracks at all. This person was Lin Sun. Stop! Suddenly, an extraordinarily valiant man in golden armor shouted, "You're also working for others. You'd better get out of the way now." In the distance, Lin Sun walked forward as if he was taking a stroll. His calm voice resounded through the world. There was a commotion in the crowd. The man in golden armor shouted, "Everyone, the 3 elders of the Qin Divine Clan have given a death order. No one is allowed to leave the 7th Forbidden Zone. No matter who retreats this time, the Qin Divine Clan will settle the score with them in the future." Many people showed their killing intent and were ready to make a move. But Lin Sun said with a smile, "You mean the 3 old guys? They are all dead. You'd better leave. Don't make a mistake." His words were casual, but it stunned the strong figures of the 9 major forces. Dead? How is this possible? In their eyes, the Qin Divine Clan was the supreme ruler of the world, high and mighty, inviolable and inviolable. Who would believe that the 3 elders of the Great Qin Divine Clan would be in trouble? This is impossible. Everyone, don't listen to his alarmist talk. No matter what, capture this person first. The golden-armored man shouted. That's right. Everyone, we cannot hesitate any longer. If we allow this person to escape, none of us will be able to bear the consequences. Attack together. All kinds of voices were heard. Then, 9 big shots in the first level of Martial Venerable took the lead to attack Lin Sun. Each of them held a combat weapon in their hands, and their bodies were filled with terrifying Taoist light. They were all experienced fighters who had killed countless people. Even if they were facing Lin Sun alone, They would not hold back at all. He would only use the most powerful force to crush Lin Sun into pieces. Rumble. How terrifying would it be if 9 heavenly longevity realm martial saints attacked together? The void between heaven and earth collapsed as if it had been sucked dry in an instant. 9 different kinds of power converged into a torrent of the great path, like a heavenly river exploding, smashing down from the 9 heavens. In the face of such a destructive attack, the heavens an earth-shattering strike. The experts of the 9 forces who were stationed in the distance were all trembling in fear. If this happened in the outside world, it would probably be able to destroy an entire region of mountains and rivers. However, the next moment, Lin Sun waved his long sleeves as if he was sweeping away dust. The torrent of the Grand Tao that swept through the sky was a terrifying attack that was capable of blasting mountains and rivers into pieces, yet it actually vanished into thin air and vanished without a trace. How is this possible? The 9 martial venerables could not believe what they had seen. Again, the valiant golden-armored man shouted. The 9 martial venerables joined forces again, and an endless amount of power came crashing down. However, when they rushed in front of Lin Sun, they still disappeared as easily as before. Not even a strand of Lin Sun's hair was moved. This time, not only the 9 martial venerables, even the thousands of experts of the 9 forces in the distance were speechless and watched with their mouths agape. Too weak. I've already given you a chance, but you won't listen. Lin Sun finally spoke. He was a little dispirited, now that he had reached the great completion of the heavenly longevity realm. Even when facing 9 martial venerables of the same level, he could no longer pose any pressure or threat. This was naturally boring. In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. With a soft sigh, under the dumbfounded gaze of countless experts, Lin Sun casually pointed out with one finger. But the golden-armored man who had been clamoring, a strong man at the great completion of the martial venerables, was directly blown up in the air. Countless scarlet blood scattered in the void, and broken limbs flew all over the sky. Later, Lin Sun waved his sword finger again. The tens of thousands of meters long cyan sword chi directly cut 2 martial venerables into 2 pieces at the waist, making them scream in horror and scatter their souls. In the end, Lin Sun directly jumped up and turned into a divine rainbow, rushing straight out of the 7th forbidden area. At that moment, it was like a sharp awl tearing the sky and crossing the sky, or like an extremely sharp knife cutting butter, rushing through the enemies. Boom! On the spot, several martial venerables were hit by Lin Sun in the air and instantly exploded into blood mist. Their indestructible Taoist body was like a piece of paper, and even their souls were shattered in an instant. These martial venerables were not without resistance. They even desperately used their trump cards, but it was still of no use. Lin Sun's figure abruptly opened a bloody path. From a distance, a long line of blood spread in the void, scarlet, dazzling, and shocking. Boom! And the thousands of experts in the distance were unable to stop Lin Sun at all. Lin Sun rushed all the way, bringing a reign of terror along the way. Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared in the distant sky, there was a burst of shrill, frightened, desperate screams. It was as bloody as a painting. At that moment, the 2 surviving martial exalts and the other cultivators present here seemed as if they'd collapsed. All of their bodies trembled while their faces were ashen. The scene just now had been imprinted in each of their hearts like a shadow. Half a day later, in the 9th forbidden area, Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air. This area of 15,000 kilometers was covered in numerous sentry posts, and they were covered in restrictive formations to form a complete blockade. Most importantly, this place was enveloped by the energy of order. When Lin Sun entered the 9th forbidden area that day, his aura had been captured by the energy of order here, and that was why Qin Xiaoming was able to catch up to him in such a short period of time after he left the 9th forbidden area. Lin Sun had come here this time to refine and absorb the energy of order. Whem! The abyssal sword cauldron soared through the sky while flowing with a myriad of strands of light, and it charged towards the restrictive formation in the distance. Bang! At the first possible moment, the energy of order that was distributed in the restrictive formation was alarmed, and a misty rain of light surged out like ice and snow. But at practically the exact same moment, the order of nirvana transformed into a lotus pattern. It suppressed the energy of order that was comparable to the 8th grade of the heavenly rank, and then it started to obliterate and refine and absorb it. The area of 15,000 kilometers within the 9th forbidden area that was originally covered by the energy of order started to quake. At this moment, the mountains and rivers that were covered in ice and snow seemed as if they'd suffered a terrifying impact, and they started to collapse and be destroyed. What happened? How could this be? Shit. The energy of order is being destroyed. At this moment, the powerhouses stationed at the various sentry posts were alarmed, and they immediately rushed out. Then, they saw that the energy of order that the great Sheen celestial clan had set up in this place for countless years was collapsing and dissipating like melting glaciers. At that moment, they felt as if the sky had collapsed. There were also people who saw a tall figure that was like a god standing in the distant sky, and the aura he emitted shook the heavens and the earth. However, no one dared to step forward. An existence that could destroy the energy of order that the great Sheen celestial clan had set up was not something they could stop. Not long after, Lin Sun put away the abyssal sword cauldron. Master, are you really going to let me enjoy the 8th grade heaven rank order alone? Inside the abyssal sword cauldron, Wu Shuang, who was dressed in white and looked like a pure young girl, asked in surprise. Of course, Lin Sun replied casually. In the past, when he was in the Emperor realm, he might have cared about and cherished the heaven rank order. But now, unless it was the 9th grade of heaven rank order, he really did not care about it. Thank you, Master. After refining this energy of order, I can restore my strength to the 7th grade of heaven rank. When I recover to the 9th grade of heaven rank, I can help Master fight. Wu Shuang's voice was sweet and obedient, and her big eyes were filled with joy and longing. She was the spirit of order of the heavenly way in the Genesis world of the last era. She was extremely special to be able to survive the destruction of the era. It could be said that the ordinary spirits of order could not be compared to Wu Shuang. In the past, Wu Shuang was so severely damaged that she could only repair herself in the Nirvana order. But over the years, she had absorbed and refined a lot of order energy, and her origin energy had been greatly restored. As she said, when she recovered to the 9th grade of heaven rank, she could help Lin Sun fight. Lin Sun was looking forward to seeing how powerful Wu Shuang could be when she could fight. In fact, in addition to Wu Shuang, there were 2 kinds of order energy in his abyssal sword cauldron. One was the order of the netherworld, and the other was the order of the immortals. Both of them were extremely powerful, but these 2 kinds of order energy were rebuilt by the Nirvana order. Although they were constantly nourished by the Nirvana order, the change was extremely slow. Until now, the aura of these 2 kinds of order energy was barely maintained at the 8th grade of the Earth rank. It was also Lin Sun's fault that he gave most of the order energy collected over the years to Wu Shuang. Of course, Lin Sun did not care about this at all. At present, he still could not find anything worth paying attention to from Little Ming and Little Xian. Since they were not useful for the time being, he would rarely pay attention to them. It's time to go. Putting away the abyssal sword cauldron, Lin Sun turned around and soon disappeared into the horizon. On this day, news came from the 7th forbidden area. 3 elders of the great Qin divine clan, Qin Jingtian, Qin Jingwen, and Qin Jinglu, were in trouble, and the 9 forces stationed nearby suffered heavy casualties. On this day, there was a drastic change in the 9th forbidden area. The order energy set up by the great Qin divine clan was completely destroyed. The 2 news came out on the same day, causing a great disturbance in the world. Chapter 2880, Floating Cloud World. Great Qin divine clan. The 3 elders are all dead, and the 9 forces also suffered heavy casualties. It is said that the killer is called Lin Sun, the great-grandson of Luo Tongtian and the son of Luo Qingxuan and her husband. In the hall, the guard who came to report the news was trembling with fear, and his body was stiff. Qin Jinghe, the patriarch of the clan, emitted a terrifying, murderous intent. The air seemed to solidify, making it hard for people to breathe. His calm expression was faintly suffused with a livid expression as he said, "Have you found out where this kid is?" The guard said in a hoarse voice, "On the day this disaster happened, Lin Sun appeared in the ninth forbidden area and completely destroyed the power of order that our clan had set up, so that we can no longer find out his whereabouts." Bang! The tables and furnishings in the hall all exploded and turned into powder. The piercing, murderous intent drowned the hall like a rolling tide. Changing his face was completely livid. He hadn't been so angry for a long time, but at this moment, he couldn't control the anger in his heart at all. After a long time, Qin Jing has said, "Anything else?" The guard, who'd been terrified to the point his body shivered a long time ago, gulped down a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and said, "This matter has already shaken the world, and it's impossible to conceal or suppress it any longer. Presently, countless powers and cultivators in the Grand Qin Divine Domain are waiting to see my clan's next move." Qin Jing had took a deep breath and said, "Then, what do you think we should do?" The guard was stunned. He didn't expect that the patriarch would ask his opinion. He forced himself to calm down and said, "In my opinion, we must capture this bastard as soon as possible. Otherwise, the dignity of our clan will be affected and we will be criticized by the world." "Nonsense. I'm asking you what to do." Qin Jinghe frowned. The guard shivered and stammered, "It's all up to you, patriarch. Get lost." Qin Jinghe pointed outside the hall angrily. The guard hurried out of the hall. In the hall, Qin Jinghe was the only one left. He sat there alone, looking gloomy and silent. The great Qin divine realm was vast and boundless. Although it was the world of the Qin clan, it was undoubtedly more difficult to find a person in the vast sea of people. Previously, the power of order in the ninth forbidden zone had captured Lin Sun's aura, allowing them to accurately lock onto his tracks. But now that the power of order had been destroyed, he didn't know where to start even if he wanted to kill Lin Sun. Moreover, Lin Sun was able to kill Qin Jingtian and the other two elders and get out of the seventh forbidden zone. This made Qin Jinghe realize that Luo Tongtian's great-grandson's combat strength was strong enough to threaten a level 2 martial venerable. Under such circumstances, sending ordinary powerhouses to hunt them down was no different from sending them to their deaths. Being suppressed by the rules of heaven and earth proves that he has yet to step into the rank 3 martial honorable realm. He has come to the great Qin celestial realm to save his parents. After a long time, Qin Jinghe's eyes lit up, and he immediately ordered, "Men." The guard, who had been scolded to get out, immediately rushed into the hall and prostrated himself on the ground in fear and trepidation. Seeing his cowardly appearance, Qin Jinghe felt a wave of anger, but he still endured it and said, "Convey my order. From now on, close the ancient teleportation formation to the outside world." "Here." The guard obeyed the order and left. In the hall, Qin Jinghe stood up and said with a solemn expression, "Granduncle, please come and see me." A moment after he spoke, a skinny figure appeared out of thin air, covered in golden light, like a blazing sun, and emitted an aura that caused Qin Jinghe to hold his breath. He had long gray hair that draped down to his waist, a handsome face, and a pair of eyes that were like a fiery abyss, surging with terrifying divine light. Qin Wenjiang, a level 3 martial honorable old man with a high seniority. "What's the matter?" Qin Wenjiang asked. Qin Jinghe did not hide anything and told him about Lin Sun. He then cupped his hands together and said, "Granduncle, please make a trip to the ancient teleportation formation. If you encounter this person trying to barge into the formation, you must capture him." Qin Wenjiang nodded and turned to leave. In the entire Great Qin celestial realm, there was only one ancient teleportation formation that led to the ruins of fortune, and it was under the control of the Great Qin celestial clan. In the eyes of the world, this formation was also known as the Realm Divine Formation. There were only two ways to use this formation to leave. One was to pay a huge sum of money, and the other was to hold a nameplate issued by the Great Qin Celestial Clan. After Lin Sun left the ninth forbidden area, he immediately rushed to the location of the Realm Divine formation. In just 2 days, at the shore of the Cloudfall Sea, Lin Sun's figure appeared here. Looking from afar, a layer of snow-white clouds covered the vast blue sea, and mist curled around it. That was how the Cloudfall Sea got its name. The Realm Divine formation was located in the depths of this sea. Lin Sun now knew that the flowing light forbidden area where his parents were trapped was located in the depths of a chaotic universe outside the Great Qin Celestial Realm. This meant that if he wanted to save his parents, he had to leave through the Realm Divine formation and go to the flowing light forbidden area. Lin Sun did not delay and flew towards the depths of the Cloudfall Sea. At this moment, he had changed his appearance and concealed his aura, so ordinary people would not be able to see through his true appearance. Not long after, a huge city appeared on the surface of the sea in the distance. It was completely dark green, like a colossus lying on the sea. Cloudfall Divine City. The Realm Divine formation was located in it. In the past, this city was extremely prosperous and bustling, and many practitioners came from all over the world. But when Lin Sun looked at it from afar, the city was deserted. There was no one on both sides of the 300-meter-high city gate, except for the guard stationed there. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and sensed that something was wrong. After thinking for a moment, he flew straight over. "Stop!" Seeing Lin Sun flying over, a guard guarding the city gate shouted, "The Realm Divine formation has been closed. Don't come any closer. Retreat quickly." "It's closed?" Lin Sun asked. "Why? Cut the crap. Get out of here if you don't want to die." The guard shouted. Lin Sun smiled and said, "There's a saying that those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. Since you're so rude, don't blame me for being ruthless." He flew straight towards the city gate. The guards stationed on both sides of the city gate were furious and wanted to stop him, but they felt darkness in front of them, and they immediately lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Lin Sun's figure had entered the city. The row upon row of streets were completely empty while the doors of the various shops were closed, causing it to be extremely deserted like a city of the dead. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed, and he flew straight forward. The Realm Divine formation was located in the center of the city. However, as soon as Lin Sun moved, there was a sudden change. Bang, bang, bang. Numerous divine arrows shot over explosively from all directions. They were like peerlessly sharp bolts of lightning, and they tore through the sky while dragging along dazzling and blazing divine radiance. Every single arrow was tyrannical and had the power to kill a heavenly longevity realm expert. When they whistled through the air, it was enough to make one despair. Boom! Lin Sun didn't dodge. With a wave of his sleeve, endless sword chi spread out. With a series of ear-piercing explosions, the divine arrows exploded in the void, and a rain of light rained down, destroying all the nearby buildings. Go! Lin Sun waved his finger. A sword chi flew out of thin air. In a courtyard far away, a vigorous man was holding a big black bow, and the bowstring was still trembling violently. The previous round of dense arrow rain was his doing. But in just a moment, the vigorous man's face changed greatly. He flashed and turned into a ray of flowing light, drilling into the void and escaping with all his strength. But he was one step late. Puff! A sword chi slashed down, and the void was cut open like a piece of paper. Then 2 bloody corpses fell from it and smashed to the ground. It was the vigorous man, but he was cut in half, and his soul had long been erased. Clang! The big black bow in his hand also fell to the ground, and the bowstring had been broken. In the blink of an eye, such a man in the first level of martial venerable realm was killed by a sword. However, all this was just the beginning. When Lin Sun was about to move forward, the closed doors of the shops on both sides of the street suddenly burst open, and figures rushed out. Kill! 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 The roar was earth-shattering, and the horrible killing intent swept across the sky like a raging storm, breaking the desolation and silence on the street at once. More than 20 martial venerables comparable to the heavenly longevity realm attacked. There were men and women, old and young. They took out flying swords, sabers, Taoist seals, spears, and other treasures. The power emitted from their bodies was enough to cover the sky and suppress the void. It was so tyrannical that it made people tremble. This scale was even more horrible than the 9 martial venerables Lin Sun met outside the 7th forbidden area. If it were others, their first reaction would be to run away. But Lin Sun didn't retreat. Buzz! Abyssal Sword Cauldron was released. Hundreds of millions of lights drifted along with Lin Sun's figure. The power of Abyssal Sword Cauldron was also extremely horrible. Boom! When the war broke out, the densely packed buildings and streets in the city almost collapsed and burned in an instant. The whole divine city of Cloud shook violently. The divine light roared and the weapons clashed. Lin Sun pushed forward with a crushing momentum all the way. All kinds of flying swords, weapons, and ancient seals were either destroyed by the Abyssal Sword Cauldron or smashed by the Taoist swords in the Sword Cauldron, producing a rumbling sound and a rain of light. In next to no time, shrill cries and furious roars resounded, and they were mixed with severed limbs and blood. Lin Sun was unstoppable. In a few breaths, he killed 6 or 7 people like slaughtering chickens and monkeys. He was invincible. Die. Suddenly, an unusual aura came from afar. It was a black-robed man holding a bronze halberd, releasing the aura comparable to the Nirvana realm. There was no doubt that he was in the 2nd level of martial venerable realm. Lin Sun looked calm. He didn't dodge and just charged forward. At the same time, the 5 Taoist bodies, greenwood, scarlet fire, platinum, yellow, and black water, rushed out together and directly surrounded the black-robed man. Lin Sun's 5 Taoist bodies were not inferior to Lin Sun's. At this moment, they attacked together with all their strength. The martial venerable, who was comparable to the Nirvana realm, was seriously injured. It didn't take long for him to be beaten up. His body was broken and his spirit was burned. The horrible and bloody scene stimulated a burst of screams in the surroundings. Unbelievable. P.S. The second one is a little later. Chapter 2881. Ever since Lin Sun embarked on the immortal path, he had only fought against a Nirvana realm expert. Not long ago, in the 7th Forbidden Area, he killed Qin Jingtian and the other 2 Nirvana realm martial venerables. He used the Forbidden Passing technique and the Blade of Time to defeat them. Now, he destroyed a Nirvana realm martial venerables with the help of his 5 Tao bodies. If Yuan family saw this scene, they wouldn't know what to think. Boom! The battle continued. While killing the Nirvana realm martial venerables, Lin Sun's main body also killed a few more opponents. At this moment, he was indeed too domineering. He was unstoppable and invincible. Blood splattered everywhere, and horrified screams resounded. Such a battle was rare, even in the Great Qin Divine Territory. Dozens of heavenly longevity realm martial venerables couldn't stop a single person. If news of this were spread, it would definitely shock the world. All of you back off. Suddenly, a cold and indifferent voice resounded in the sky. Almost at the same time, an indescribably horrifying aura swept over like dark clouds. Lin Sun's body suddenly turned cold, and he raised his head. A figure appeared out of thin air before the teleportation formation in the extreme distance. The figure had gray long hair that hung to his waist, a handsome face that seemed like that of a young man, and a pair of eyes that were like flaming abysses that surged with a terrifying and shocking glow. He wore a jade robe and stood there casually. However, the aura from his body had already spread throughout the city and enveloped the sky. Great Qin Divine Clan's 3rd level martial venerables, Qin Wenjiang, the remaining 10 or so people on the battlefield, all fled at the first possible moment and disappeared. Lin Sun didn't chase after them. They were all insignificant figures. The biggest threat to whether he could leave the Great Qin Divine Territory was the man in the jade robe in the distance. a horrifying existence with transcendent realm cultivation. Such a figure could be considered as a heavyweight in the Yuan family. He could stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the elders in the three pavilions. In terms of cultivation, he could be considered as the same generation as the three deputy pavilion masters. However, there were differences between the transcendent realm. At least the three deputy pavilion masters of the Yuan family had already reached the transcendent realm great perfection. Their foundation was terrifyingly deep. Lin Sun didn't know how profound the man in the jade robe was in the transcendent realm, but it was enough to pose a fatal threat to him. The city fell silent once more. The streets were cracked, and the buildings had collapsed. It was a scene of ruins, and the smell of blood still lingered in the air. You clearly know that this place is filled with danger, yet you still dare to enter alone. Amazing. You are even better than your great-grandfather. In front of the ancient teleportation array, Qin Wenjiang slowly spoke as he surveyed Lin Sun. The formless pressure radiating from him caused Lin Sun to feel as though he was suffocating. The power of the transcendent realm was too terrifying. Even though he was at the great circle of the heavenly longevity realm, even though he had stepped onto the path of an undying supreme, there was still a difference of two great realms. But Lin Sun didn't flinch. Instead, he took a deep breath and walked forward step by step on the ruined street. Qin Wenjiang furrowed his brows. Why must you seek death? There are 8 third-stage martial venerables guarding the place where your parents are trapped. Even if you go, isn't it no different from seeking death? Lin Sun walked forward step by step without stopping and said, previously, there was a guy called Qin Xiaoming who was like you. He was full of nonsense. In the end, he didn't dare to act rashly because he didn't know my trump card. After a pause, he sneered, to put it nicely, it's called being cautious. To put it bluntly, it's called being a coward. Coward. Qin Wenjiang's expression turned cold. He stretched out his hand and pointed. Boom. It was just a finger force, yet crushed the heavens and the void. Lin Sun didn't dodge. Under this attack, he had no chance to dodge at all. The finger force enveloped all directions, and it was omnipresent. There was no way to escape or avoid it. If he were to face it head-on, it would be like an ant trying to shake a tree or a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He would be easily crushed to death. This was the difference between the heavenly longevity realm and the transcendent realm. It was like a natural chasm, and there was no way to make up for it. But Lin Sun didn't retreat. In front of him, Xian Failing's will avatar appeared, and he threw a punch. Boom! The huge Cloudfall Divine City shook violently, as if it was about to sink. As the smoke and dust dispersed, Qin Wenjiang said, previously, before you escaped to the 7th Forbidden Area, this was the trump card that allowed you to escape from death. He wasn't surprised at all. As he spoke, he pinched his thumb and fingers together, and a strand of sword chi slashed out. Swoosh! The heavens and earth seemed to have been sliced apart. When the unparalleled sword intent slashed down, the deity's praises resounded. Kill your way over. Xian Failing's sleeves fluttered, and he threw another punch. The fist and the sword clashed. The unparalleled sword intent crumbled inch by inch in the void, which made Qin Wenjiang's pupil shrink. As a third-level martial venerable, every move of his was filled with the power to break free from the rules of Tao and destroy everything in the universe. With such power, even a flick of his finger could easily crush anyone below the transcendent realm. The reason why Qin Wenjiang didn't make a move earlier was because he knew that Lin Sun had another trump card. However, he didn't expect the power of a will avatar to be able to block 2 of his attacks. Without a doubt, the owner of this avatar was destined to be unbelievably powerful in the 3rd-level martial venerable realm. Fortunately, it was just a will avatar. A murderous intent flashed in Qin Wenjiang's eyes. Clang! A gorgeous and resplendent flying sword flashed out, and the aura it emitted was so powerful that it caused the heavens and the earth to dim down, and everything in the world showed signs of withering and collapsing. This was an incredible power, completely beyond Lin Sun's understanding. Go! Qin Wenjiang waved his sleeves, and the flying sword suddenly disappeared out of thin air. At the same time, Xian Feiling's figure suddenly rushed out. Lin Sun used the forbidden passing supernatural power. Buzz! In an instant, the magnificent flying sword stopped between Lin Sun's eyebrows. It was only 3 inches away from cutting Lin Sun in half. It was incredibly fast and terrifying. But at that very moment, as Lin Sun's figure retreated, a huge space-time crack emerged in front of him, like a black hole in the depths of the starry sky, emitting a terrifying aura. The Gate of Exile. A series of actions all happened at the same time. When Qin Wenjiang recovered from a shock, he saw that when the true dragon flying sword that he'd nurtured for countless years slashed down, it seemed to have lost all its might, and it vanished soundlessly within the mysterious rift door. As if it had delivered itself to him, Qin Wenjiang only felt a stabbing pain in his mind, and his connection with the true dragon flying sword was completely cut off. His expression immediately changed, and he was extremely furious. Damn it! This abnormal scene caught him off guard, and he was even a little confused. Even with his countless years of cultivation experience, he couldn't understand what kind of power this was. Without giving Qin Wenjiang a chance to react, Xian Feiling had already seized the opportunity and rushed towards him. A mysterious and unpredictable sword, Qi, slashed down from Xian Feiling's palm. When this slash was unleashed, his will avatar became much dimmer. Obviously, the power contained in this slash was too strong, and the energy consumed was also great. However, Qin Wenjiang was a martial venerable comparable to the transcendent realm. At this moment of danger, he suddenly took a deep breath, and the aura of his body suddenly skyrocketed. Condense! A round and dazzling golden light shield condensed in front of him, and it radiated brilliance. Boom! The sword and shield collided, and a horrifying torrent of Tao light burst forth. The heavens and earth violently trembled, and countless spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the entire giant city. If it wasn't for the fact that this was the only ancient teleportation array that led to the outside world, and that there were many ancient forbidden arrays set up in the city would have already been destroyed. Bang! Qin Wenjiang's figure flew out, and blood flowed out from his lips. Even though he reacted in time, he was still being attacked, and he was injured by this attack. Xian Feiling, who was far away, didn't have the time to regret not being able to kill Qin Wenjiang with a single slash. He took this opportunity to step into the ancient teleportation array with Lin Sun. You won't be able to escape. The array plate that activates this array is in my hands. Qin Wenjiang said coldly from afar, and a white array plate that resembled a tortoise shell appeared in his hand. Come and take it if you want it. Within the ancient teleportation array, Lin Sun looked around and said, Senior, I can activate this array in 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Sure. Xian Feiling stretched his body, and his sleeves fluttered. Anyway, it's just a manifestation of will. I'll buy you some time before it's destroyed. His figure had become much dimmer, but his aura was still domineering and domineering. Senior, why don't we kill this old thing together? Lin Sun transmitted his voice, and a ruthless look flashed in his eyes. Your blade of time can't stop a transcendent realm expert now. Don't talk nonsense and act quickly. Xian Feiling just finished transmitting his voice. Whoosh! Qin Wenjiang, who was far away, had already rushed over. He obviously didn't intend to give Lin Sun any chance. I've been in the transcendent realm for countless years. Although I'm only using a manifestation of will, it's not difficult to stop you for 15 minutes. With a cold snort, Xian Feiling stepped forward and punched. Boom! Qin Wenjiang's figure stagnated. The power he released was destroyed by the terrifying fist energy, and he staggered backward. If you were here, I'm afraid I would have already escaped. But with the current power of your manifestation, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on for 15 minutes. As he spoke, Qin Wenjiang rushed over again. His terrifying aura pierced through the heavens and earth. Boom, boom, boom. He was shaken back again and again. Although he seemed to be in a difficult position, he didn't suffer much damage. On the contrary, with the consumption of power, Xian Feiling's manifestation gradually became dimmer. It was no longer as solid as before and became illusory and blurry. Ha ha ha, it's only been less than 15 minutes, and you can't hold on anymore? Qin Wenjiang looked up and laughed. He could see that Xian Feiling's manifestation was about to collapse. But Xian Feiling showed a pitiful expression as if he was looking at a fool, and sighed, I said it's 15 minutes, and you really believe it? Qin Wenjiang was stunned. At this moment, the ancient teleportation array suddenly lit up. Not good. Qin Wenjiang's face suddenly turned ugly. He realized that he had been fooled. Without any hesitation, he rushed forward. Get out of my way. He waved his fist to kill. Good timing. At this moment, Xian Feiling's manifestation suddenly exploded as if it was burning. Boom! When looked at from extremely far away, it seemed as if a sun had exploded within Cloudfall City, and a boundlessly violent torrent of destruction suddenly charged out. The nearby sea seemed as if it had instantly evaporated, whereas the sky seemed as if it had been set ablaze, and it was dazzling and resplendent for an area of 1,500 kilometers. That scene was utterly shocking. In the city, Qin Wenjiang couldn't help but roar in anger when he saw the ancient teleportation array. His hair was disheveled, his body was charred, and his clothes were tattered. Chapter 2882. Xian Feiling's self-immolation attack had heavily injured Qin Wenjiang. But compared to his injuries, what made Qin Wenjiang suffer even more was the fact that Lin Sun had escaped. After a long time, Qin Wenjiang gradually calmed down. He took a deep breath, and the external injuries on his body disappeared. However, the internal injuries on his body would take at least 3 to 5 months to recover. I can't let this go. His eyes surged with a frightening cold light. Lin Sun was Luo Tongtian's great-grandson, and he controlled the power of time. He had clearly obtained great fortune from the eternal coffin. If they let Lin Sun escape just like that, the Qin clan's countless years of waiting would be destroyed. This was something Qin Wenjiang couldn't tolerate. Whoosh! He waved his hand, and a transmission jade slip tore through the air, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Then he walked into the teleportation ancient formation. With a strange rumble, Qin Wenjiang's figure also disappeared. Cloudfall City that used to be extremely bustling had already been reduced to an expanse of deathly, silent ruins now, and it seemed to be silently narrating the terror of the battle from before. Floating Cloud World. Great Qin Divine Clan. When Qin Jinghe received the news from Qin Wenjiang, it was already 2 hours later. Crack! The transmission jade slip exploded into powder in Qin Jinghe's hand. His expression was gloomy, and his eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. Not long ago, Qin Jingtian, Qin Jingwen, and Qin Jinglu had met with disaster in the 7th Forbidden Zone. But now, even his granduncle, Qin Wenjiang, had let Lin Sun escape. This series of blows almost made Qin Jinghe go berserk. I can only hope that granduncle can capture this kid before he goes to the flowing light Forbidden Zone. Otherwise, everything will be in danger. Qin Jinghe sighed and slumped back into his chair. Lin Sun had escaped the Great Qin Divine Realm, which was equivalent to escaping the territory controlled by the Qin Divine Clan. All of this meant that no matter how much power they sent, it would be of no use. The ruins of creation was too big. It was spread across hundreds of epochs. Outside the Great Qin Divine Realm, the Qin clan wouldn't be in charge of the outside world. What troubled Qin Jinghe the most was that once Lin Sun appeared in the flowing light Forbidden Zone, he would definitely be discovered by the other 3 top forces. At that time, their Qin clan couldn't even dream of taking the eternal coffin for themselves. Once such a thing happened to their Qin clan, these countless years of waiting were destined to be for naught. Now, Qin Jinghe only hoped that his granduncle Qin Wenjiang could capture Lin Sun as soon as possible. In a vast starry sky, there was an ancient city floating in the air. This city was called Qin. If one wanted to go to the Great Qin Divine Realm from other epochs, they would have to go through Qin City's teleportation formation. Similarly, Qin City was a place one had to pass if one wanted to travel from the Great Qin Divine Realm to other epochs. To put it simply, Qin City was a door opened in the ruins of creation. Inside the door was the Great Qin Divine Domain, and outside the door was the entire ruins of creation. For countless years, the Qin City had always been guarded by the forces of the Great Qin celestial clan. Currently, the city governor stationed in Qin City was a martial highness with strength comparable to the Nirvana god realm. His name was Qin Huailin. My lord, in the 2 days since the ancient teleportation formation was closed, the number of experts that remained in the city has reached tens of thousands. City governor's mansion. One of the subordinates reported, "There are many complaints and accusations coming from the streets and alleys, saying that we've delayed their business." Qin Huailin lay lazily on a soft couch and said, "Ignore them. The Great Qin Divine Realm is our Qin family's territory. No matter how much they complain, it's useless." He was thin, wore a luxurious robe, and carried himself gracefully. "My lord, someone has opened the ancient teleportation formation from the Great Qin Divine Realm to Qin City." Suddenly, an anxious voice sounded outside the hall. Qin Huailin was startled. He stood up and said with a flicker in his eyes, "Could it be that they succeeded? Let's go and take a look." With that, he strode out. The ancient teleportation formation was in the huge square in front of the city governor's mansion. However, when Qin Huailin arrived, there was no one in front of the ancient teleportation formation. "Where is he?" Qin Huailin's heart sank. The guards guarding the teleportation formation looked at each other in dismay. They immediately felt that something was wrong. One of them said in a trembling voice, "My lord, that person was in a hurry. He left as soon as he appeared." Qin Huailin's face darkened. He forcefully suppressed the bad premonition in his heart and said, "Did you see where he went?" He tore through the sky and left. A guard pointed at the starry sky in the distance. Qin Huailin felt that something was wrong even more, and he said, "Did any of you recognize him?" "My lord, I saw him clearly. He looked like a young man." A guard quickly described Lin Sun's appearance to Qin Huailin. Qin Huailin took out a jade slip when he finished listening. As light and shadow flowed, the scenes of Lin Sun appearing in the 9th forbidden area appeared. "Is it him?" Qin Huailin asked. "It's him," all the guards said in unison. Qin Huailin's mind buzzed as if he'd been struck by lightning. In order to prevent the news of Lin Sun's appearance in the Great Qin Divine Realm from leaking out, he was the only person in the entire Qin City who knew the reason why the teleportation formation was closed. But now, the target had escaped right under his nose. "A bunch of trash. Why didn't any of you stop him?" Qin Huailin was so angry that he slapped the guard closest to him, and the latter was blasted, flying with blood spraying from his mouth and nose. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. Everyone was able to discern that Qin Huailin was extremely furious at this moment. However, they felt very wronged in their hearts because they weren't the ones who'd opened the teleportation formation, and they didn't know the identity of the person who'd escaped. Not to mention that person had left right after he'd appeared. So how could they have had the chance to stop him? Numerous figures appeared on the distant streets. All of them were cultivators that had stayed in the city, and they'd obviously been drawn over by the incident that was occurring here. Especially the furious appearance of City Governor Qin Huailin. It aroused the curiosity of countless people. What exactly is going on? Whem! In next to no time, the teleportation formation rumbled once more, and then a figure appeared out of thin air. Surprisingly, it was Qin Wenjiang. Qin Huailin's figure trembled when he saw this senior of his clan appear, and then he bowed and said, "Ancestor, where's he?" Qin Wenjiang swept the surroundings with his gaze, and he'd realized the situation, causing his expression to become unsightly. He fled towards that direction earlier. Qin Huailin pointed towards the distant starry sky. Earlier, he was boundlessly furious and possessed a terrifying, imposing aura. Yet at this moment, he was trembling with fear while cold sweat broke out from his forehead. "Trash! I asked you to guard the teleportation formation, yet you just watched as the target fled. Do you know that it's very likely for the clan to be spoiled because of your carelessness?" Qin Wenjiang was angered to the point he couldn't help but curse loudly. "I'll get even with you once I capture that little bastard." Swoosh! His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when he'd teleported off into the distance. Qin Huailin's expression changed indeterminately, and he felt rather aggrieved, just like those guards he'd reprimanded earlier. "Even you, ancestor, weren't able to stop him in the Grand Qin domain. Why are you placing all the blame on me now?" When he saw those guards standing there like idiots, Qin Huailin's belly full of rage and grievance erupted, and he said, "What are you looking at? If the clan blames you this time, then all of you won't be able to escape as well." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve and left. Those guards had a bitter taste in their mouths, and they were dumbstruck like clay statues. What would they do? No matter how innocent and aggrieved they were, as nobodies, they could only take the blame for a great figure. "What are you looking at? Quickly disperse." When they saw that there were many spectators in the distance, those guards flew into a rage out of humiliation, and they reprimanded. Even so, the spectators still saw through many mysteries. So the teleportation formation was closed to capture a person. Who's that person? He was actually able to escape from the Grand Qin clan's territory, and he even alarmed a level 3 martial venerable to personally pursue him. This matter is too unusual. The crowd discussed animatedly. Quickly send the news back. Just say that something extraordinary has happened in the Grand Qin domain, and ask the clan to send a level 3 martial venerable to investigate. In the crowd, a purple-robed woman swiftly branded a strand of thought on a mysterious jade talisman, and then she lightly pinched it with her fingers. The jade talisman soundlessly turned into a strand of light, and it shot deep into the boundless starry sky. At the same time, in other parts of the city, many people had the same thoughts as the purple-robed woman. They'd realized that what had just happened was unusual, and they'd all sent messages using secret techniques. It could be foreseen that what had happened today in the Grand Qin domain and Qin City would soon be found out by the big shots of other epics. At that time, there would probably be another wave in the ruins of fate. In a restaurant in the city, Lin Sun, who had already changed his appearance, drank up the wine in the pot in one gulp and stood up. Previously, as soon as he stepped out of the teleportation formation, he teleported into the void and rushed deep into the starry sky, which was seen by many people. But in fact, it was just a camouflage. When no one noticed him, he had already returned to the city. At this moment, when he saw Qin Wenjiang flying away, Lin Sun finally heaved a sigh of relief. He had decided to leave, not to the flowing light forbidden area, but to the divine city of fate. Lin Sun had once searched Qin Jinglu's soul, and he knew that there was a magical giant city in the ruins of fate, which was regarded as a place that the deities didn't care about. That was the divine city of fate. Since ancient times, the divine clans of hundreds of epics in the ruins of fate had tried to occupy the divine city of fate, but without exception, all of them had failed. The reason was that the divine city of fate was filled with a strange taboo power, and anyone who entered the city would have their cultivation suppressed. Even an immortal's cultivation would be suppressed to the Emperor realm. As for Eternal Realm experts, they would be repelled by the city, and once they approached, they would be attacked by the strange taboo power. In history, there had been more than one Eternal Realm expert who had retreated in a sorry state in front of the city. Because of this, the divine city of fate got its name, which meant that even if the divine clan came, they would be helpless in front of the city. Now, the divine city of creation seemed to have become a place where the civilizations of the various eras converged. Every single day, experts from over 100 eras would come and go. Some came to exchange their experiences in cultivation, some came to exchange treasures, and some. It made the divine city of fate bustling and extremely prosperous. When Lin Sun learned of the existence of the divine city of fate from Qin Jinglu's memory, he immediately remembered this magical city that was not cared about. Chapter 2883. Outside the flowing light forbidden zone, there were 3 top Protoss clans and the Qin clan's forces. To be more precise, there were at least 8 transcendent realm existences guarding outside the flowing light forbidden zone. Lin Sun learned all of this from Qin Jingle's memory. There was no mistake. This was also the reason why Lin Sun decided to go to the Fortune Divine City instead of the flowing light forbidden zone. It was too dangerous. Even if Lin Sun had other trump cards, he couldn't guarantee that he could successfully rescue his parents from the flowing light forbidden zone if he went there rashly. At the end of the day, Lin Sun couldn't determine whether the power of Tai Xian's could suppress the 8 transcendent realm antiques. Even if Tai Xian was in the eternal realm, Lin Sun could only use the will left in the token by Tai Xian. As for those transcendent realm antiques, they were all characters who had lived for countless years. Of course, the core problem was that Lin Sun really didn't know anything about the power controlled by the eternal realm. That was why he had to analyze the situation calmly and adopt the safest method, which was to go to the Fortune Divine City. As long as he reached the Fortune Divine City, Lin Sun would no longer be afraid of any enemies. This was because the taboo power that covered the city suppressed all cultivators. No matter how strong they were, they could only exert the cultivation of the Emperor Realm. In the Emperor Realm, how could Lin Sun be afraid of anyone? Moreover, in the Fortune Divine City, he could also come into contact with the cultivators of the Great Ming Ruins and find out the path to the Great Ming Ruins. At that time, he could go to the Great Ming Ruins first. Tai Xian once said that as long as he arrived at the Great Ming Ruins with his token, someone would immediately sense the aura of the token and provide help. While thinking, Lin Sun had already walked out of the restaurant. His figure flashed, and he swept towards the distant starry sky. The starry sky was vast and boundless. The ruins of creation was like a universe world, with hundreds of era ruins dotting it. It was unimaginably large. It was different from the ultimate ruins in Kunlun ruins. According to Lin Sun's calculations, with his current cultivation, it would take him 10 days to travel from Qin City to the Fortune Divine City. Moreover, this journey was not peaceful. It was full of unimaginable dangers. There were often natural disasters, such as space turbulence, time storms, and so on. Fortunately, Lin Sun had obtained the route to Fortune City from Qin Jingle's memory, so he didn't have to worry about anything when he crossed the starry sky. However, only half a day later, Lin Sun, who was trekking in the starry sky, stopped abruptly and took out the abyssal sword cauldron at once. Bang! A terrifying palm force appeared out of thin air and slammed down ruthlessly, causing the abyssal sword cauldron to wail and tremble while Lin Sun's figure was sent flying. Puff! He coughed up blood, and his aura surged. When Xiao Chun looked up, he saw a figure covered in golden divine flames and exuding a berserk aura in the distant starry sky. It was actually Qin Wenjiang. However, at this moment, his expression was icy cold while his eyes surged with ghastly killing intent. He was like an ancient ferocious god that had gone berserk, and the might he emanated was so powerful that it caused this expanse of the starry sky to tremble and roil. Run! Why aren't you running? Qin Wenjiang's voice was cold and filled with hatred. The fact that Lin Sun had seized the opportunity to escape from the great Qin divine realm was a great humiliation to him, and he was on the verge of going mad. Previously, he listened to Qin Huailin's words and foolishly chased after Lin Sun in the direction of the flowing light forbidden zone. Only when he was halfway there did he realize that something was amiss and immediately turned back. After searching the entire Qin city and not finding any traces of Lin Sun, Qin Wenjiang immediately deduced that Lin Sun had most likely escaped to the Fortune Divine City. After all, the Fortune Divine City was a place where the gods didn't care about. Only there would Lin Sun be unafraid of the great Qin divine clan's pursuit. After making this judgment, Qin Wenjiang immediately chased after Lin Sun. After spending several hours of frenzied teleportation, he finally saw Lin Sun. Why are you in such a hurry to die? Lin Sun couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Little brat, without the protection of the will avatar, you still dare to be so stubborn. As Qin Wenjiang spoke, he extended his hand towards Lin Sun. Boom! A dazzling golden hand swept across the sky, releasing a golden light of the Tao that incinerated all the stars in the nearby area. This was the power of a transcendent realm expert. It wasn't something that Lin Sun could resist at all. Even if he used the forbidden passing magical power, the Blade of Time, and the Door of Exile, it wouldn't change the outcome of being suppressed. Lin Sun naturally understood this. So, he immediately took out the token that Tai Xian gave him. Swish! The first thing that appeared was a simple sword aura that gently flashed in the starry sky. The dazzling golden hand was sliced apart like a piece of paper, and it dispersed and vanished in the air. Then, Tai Xian's majestic figure appeared out of thin air. He was dressed in linen clothes, and his long hair was loose. His appearance was elegant and refined. Behind him, there were billions of auspicious lights circulating. One could vaguely see a Tao sword floating in the billions of lights. It was faintly discernible. The scene was shocking and terrifying. Elder, I have no choice. I have to trouble you to come out personally. Lin Sun wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said helplessly, On the great way, who will reach the end of the road? In my opinion, when you achieve the transcendent realm, people like him will be as weak as chickens and dogs. Tai Xian's voice was clear and crisp. He stood there like a supreme ruler. In the distance, the pupils of Qin Wenjiang, who was originally surging with murderous intent and terrifying power, suddenly dilated. He said involuntarily, Martial God. At this moment, his expression was extremely interesting. He seemed to be in disbelief and unconcealable fear. It was as if he was struck by lightning. However, Qin Wenjiang was a transcendent realm existence after all. His reaction was extremely fast. When he sensed that something was wrong, he immediately turned around and fled. Boom! The aura on his body was terrifying. He seemed to be going all out. All of his cultivation was madly running. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. As a third-level martial honored realm existence, no one knew better than him how terrifying a martial god was. After all, there was a martial god in the Great Qin Divine Clan's ancestor. Even if it was just a martial honored will, it had the ability to easily kill a martial honored realm expert. Tai Xian's will avatar gently grabbed in the void. Suddenly, Lin Sun saw an incredible scene. Qin Wenjiang, who had escaped without a trace, was forcibly dragged back. His figure seemed to be grabbed by the hand of God. No matter how he struggled, it was useless. No. Qin Wenjiang was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. He screamed. If he knew that Lin Sun had such a trump card, he would have given up on chasing after Lin Sun. However, it was too late to regret now. At this moment, Lin Sun was also shocked. He finally realized that he was completely wrong. He had underestimated the strength of the eternal realm. He thought that it was just a will avatar. No matter how strong it wouldn't be able to suppress a transcendent realm existences. However, from the looks of it now, it wasn't the case at all. With just a grab, a transcendent realm existence like Qin Wenjiang was caught like a fly. What kind of terrifying strength was this? Should I spare his life? Tai Xian's voice was calm. Lin Sun shook his head. At this moment, a bold idea popped up in his heart. Bang! Qin Wenjiang's body exploded. Even his spirit was crushed. The blood rain evaporated in the blink of an eye. There wasn't even a trace of his death left behind. He was completely wiped out. Lin Sun's heart trembled, and he took in a deep breath. Eternal realm. How could it be so strong to such an unimaginable extent? In the eternal true world, it was rumored that only the ninth heaven's eternal god clan possessed the supreme existence of eternal realm. In the Yuan school, Tai Xian was the only eternal realm figure that Lin Sun had seen. Perhaps it was because Lin Sun was too ignorant about this realm that he didn't know how terrible the power of this realm was. But now he understood. A will avatar that wasn't even Tai Xian's original body could kill a transcendent realm expert, like killing a chicken. This completely subverted Lin Sun's understanding. As if sensing the shock in Lin Sun's heart, Tai Xian explained softly, he only has transcendent realm intermediate cultivation, and he was severely injured. If it was an opponent like Xian failing in the transcendent realm great perfection, it would take a lot of effort to kill him. It would be better if he didn't explain. After explaining, Lin Sun felt that his brain wasn't enough. It wasn't that he couldn't kill him, but it would take a lot of effort. And this was the power possessed by a mere Dharma form of will. No words could describe Lin Sun's inner feelings. He suddenly realized that in front of the eternal realm, his cultivation was not worth mentioning at all. This is the fate star. In the past, I also crossed this endless starry sky. I never thought that this time, I would come here again with the power of Will Avatar. Tai Xian put his hands behind his back, looked around, and sighed. I don't know if those old friends are still here. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, Have you found her parents? Lin Sun nodded and said, They're trapped in the flowing light, forbidden area. He immediately told Tai Xian the news he got. A transcendent realm. Tai Xian pondered for a while and said, As long as there is no eternal realm old thing like me, it should be enough to help you rescue your parents. Lin Sun's spirit was refreshed. He cupped his hands and saluted. Senior, please help me. Since I left my will avatar to you, I naturally want to help you. Tai Xian smiled. Soon after, his expression turned solemn. I also know about the 3 top god clans that you mentioned earlier. Each of them has a deep foundation and can be ranked in the top 10 of the god clans over 100 epochs. They're living eternal realm old monsters in their clans. Once they notice me, I may be able to fight against them with the power of my will avatar, but I won't be able to hold on for long. So, you have to think of a way out after rescuing your parents. As he said, he looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, Senior, what do you think of Fate Divine City? That is indeed an incomparably mystical place. Tai Xian's eyes were full of surprise, and he said, However, if you hide in the city, once you are besieged by the enemy outside the city, it will not be easy for you to leave. Immediately, he thought of something and said thoughtfully, Speaking of which, it is not impossible to choose this city as a way out. A way out? Lin Sun was stunned. Tai Xian smiled and said, It's too early to say this. I will take you to the flowing light forbidden area first. As he said, he waved his sleeve. He and Lin Sun suddenly disappeared out of thin air. Chapter 2884. Outside the flowing light forbidden zone. Magnificent palaces stood towering, bathed in starlight, divine and solemn. Ever since Luo Qingxuan and her husband were trapped in the flowing light forbidden zone, the 3 top-notch Protoss clans and the Qin clan's forces had built many palaces here and stationed them in the nearby Starry Sky area. Over the years, the 3 top-notch Protoss clans and the Qin clan had each sent 2 transcendent realm experts to guard here. In other words, there were 8 transcendent realm experts guarding outside the flowing light forbidden zone. It was a terrifying lineup that could intimidate most of the Protoss forces in the Ruins of Fortune. Apart from that, the Qin clan had also sent 300 cultivators to guard here, specifically to serve the 8 transcendent realm experts. The starry sky was silent and vast. The flowing light forbidden zone in the distance was filled with chaotic aura. Occasionally, dazzling arcs of light that were thousands of feet long would flash across, like narrow and dazzling lightning. That was the power of space-time. The entire flowing light forbidden zone was covered by the chaotic space-time turbulence, which was extremely terrifying. However, since Luo Qingxuan and her husband were trapped for nearly 200 years, the flowing light forbidden zone was extremely peaceful, without any disturbances. In fact, with 8 transcendent realm experts guarding the flowing light forbidden zone, there weren't many who dared to cause trouble in the entire Ruins of Fortune. Fellow Taoists, this old man had a sudden impulse and used a secret technique to perform a divination. I've captured some signs of trouble. I'm afraid that something big will happen soon. Please come have a chat. On this day, a hoarse and old voice suddenly resounded in the depths of a doctrine palace outside the flowing light forbidden zone. Suddenly, a terrifying aura emerged in the starry sky, and all of them rushed towards the doctrine palace. In the depths of the doctrine palace, the 2 experts, Liang Qushui and Liang Xiuyun, were sitting cross-legged on a futon. The one who spoke was Liang Qiushui. His hair was as white as snow, and his cheeks were thin. He was holding a black jade ruler that emitted a gloomy aura. Beside him, Liang Qiuyun had a skinny figure. His face was covered with wrinkles, and he wore a black robe. His body was surrounded by a bone-piercing chill. They came from the King Path era, Hes Protoss clan, Liangqiu clan. Among the hundreds of eras in the ruins of fortune, Liangqiu clan's foundation and forces could be ranked in the top 5. Liangqiu clan was also the strongest among the 3 top-notch Protoss clans stationed outside the Flowing Light Forbidden Zone. Calamity? Haha, I'm not afraid of trouble, but I'm afraid of having nothing to do. For the past 200 years, I've been guarding this place, and I've had nothing to do. Along with this voice, a beam of divine light rushed into the hall and transformed into a young man in a fiery red Taoist robe. He had slanted eyebrows and starry eyes, and every single move he made revealed a domineering aura. Ing Xiaoyuan. He was a transcendent realm master of the Cloud Shadow era Protoss clans, Ing clan. Although he looked like a teenager, he had lived for tens of thousands of years. Following closely behind him was a beautiful and cold purple-clothed woman. She held a white jade Rui scepter in her hand, and the Rui scepter was inscribed with 2 strange Dao markings of celestial lightning. Ing Qing. Just like Ing Xiaoyuan, he came from the Ing clan of the gods race. As soon as they appeared, they casually sat on a futon placed on the ground. Brother Ing is right. We do hope that something will happen near the Flowing Light Forbidden Zone. A hearty laughter rang out. Then, 2 figures entered the palace at almost the same time. The person who spoke was tall and had large sleeves that fluttered in the wind. He wore a purple gold lotus crown on his head and held a snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand. Yinan said he was a transcendent realm master of the Upper Qing era's god clan, Yin clan. Beside Yin On Dao was an elegant-looking man in plain clothes with his hair coiled into a bun. He carried an ancient bronze sword that was mottled with blood on his back. His name was Yin Anqing, and like Yin On Dao, he came from the Yin clan of the celestial race. Regardless of whether it was the Ing clan that Ing Xiaoyuan and Ing Qing came from, or the Yin clan that Yin On Dao and Yin Anqing came from, they were all ranked within the top 10 deities clans across the 100 epochs. Even though it was slightly inferior to the Liangqiu clan, it was still a colossus in the ruins of creation. In short, these 3 god clans were the top god clans in name and in reality. Each of their clans had terrifying figures at the Eternal Realm. Soon, the great Qin divine clan's 2 transcendent realm masters arrived as well. They were Qin Wenjin and Qin Jiui. Qin Wentian's skin was bronze, his chin was like a swallow's, and his beard was like a tiger's. Qin Jiui was emaciated like a bamboo, with sunken eyes, and he seemed as if a gust of wind would be able to blow him away. After the 2 entered the Doctrine Palace, they took their seats. However, they sat on the 2 futons at the end. It couldn't be helped. Although they were on par with everyone else in terms of cultivation realm, the forces behind them were far inferior to the 3 top-notch god clans. They could only be considered as second-rate. Now, all 8 transcendent realm masters had arrived. Since Taoist brother deduced some signs of disaster, it must be related to the Flowing Light Forbidden region. Does this mean that someone is coming to rescue that couple? Asked Ing Xiaoyuan, who wore a fiery red robe and looked like a teenager. Everyone else looked towards Liang Qiushui. That should be the case. Liang Qiushui nodded. Could it be that Luo Tongtian has returned? Ing Xiaoyuan's eyes lit up. We can't be sure yet. As Liang Qiushui spoke, he turned his gaze towards Qin Wenjin and Qin Jiui. If Luo Tongtian returns to the ruins of fortune, he will definitely bring the Sword of Fortune with him and enter the Great Qin Divine Domain. May I ask the 2 of you, has anything major happened in the Great Qin Divine Domain recently? Qin Wenjin and Qin Jiui looked at each other and shook their heads. We haven't received any news recently. We haven't received any news, but it doesn't mean that nothing has happened, said Liang Qiushui in a deep voice. The signs of disaster that I deduced previously might have come from the Great Qin Divine Territory. Qin Wenjin's expression changed slightly, and he said, "Really?" Ing Xiaoyuan said, "Brother Liang Qiushui wouldn't joke about such matters. Could it be that Luo Tongtian has already arrived in the great Qin divine territory, but the Qin clan covered up this news?" His voice was filled with suspicion. Ing Qing, Yan Andao, Yan Onxing, and the others also looked towards Qin Wenjin and Qin Jiui. Everyone knew that Luo Tongtian was the one who took the eternal coffin from the great Qin divine territory. If the great Qin divine clan wanted to keep the treasure for themselves, they wouldn't leak the news. Qin Wenjin and Qin Jiui's expressions changed. "The two of us really don't know about this matter. If you have any doubts, I'll go and investigate it myself." Qin Wenjin took a deep breath and said. Liang Qiushui said indifferently, "There's no need. The signs of disaster that I deduced will happen in the flowing light forbidden zone. This also means that if Luo Tongtian comes, your Qin clan probably won't be able to stop him, and he'll be able to charge out of the great Qin divine territory." That's indeed the case. Ing Xiaoyuan and the others became spirited. Qin Wenjin and Qin Jiui's hearts sank at the same time. Liang Qiushui's deduction made them acutely aware that if Luo Tongtian had really charged out of the great Qin divine territory, then their Qin clan would have probably paid a great price. The great Qin divine territory will take the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Please wait for a moment. I'll go and investigate. Qin Jiui, who had a skinny figure and sunken eye sockets, immediately stood up and walked out. No one stopped him. What they had discussed before were all speculations. If they could let Qin Jiui find out more accurate information, it would naturally be better. No matter what, everyone must be prepared. If it's really Luo Tongtian, since he dared to return, he must have something to rely on. We can't be careless. Liang Qiushui stroked his beard and muttered. Back then, it was the Qin clan that chased after Luo Tongtian. But now, our three god clans are also here. If Luo Tongtian dares to come, he'll only be courting death. Ing Xiaoyuan's eyes were full of disdain. The others also smiled. What Ing Xiaoyuan said was exactly what they were thinking. Could a single Luo Tongtian resist the power of their three top god clans? Only Qin Wenjin felt very depressed. Ing Xiaoyuan's words were obviously mocking the Qin clan for being too useless back then. They failed to stop Luo Tongtian and instead allowed him to escape with the eternal coffin. If it's really Luo Tongtian who comes, have you thought about who will get the eternal coffin after we snatch it? Yanan Dao, who had not spoken since entering the Dao Palace, suddenly asked. His words caused the air to become silent. Everyone's eyes flickered as they looked at each other. Although they did not speak, the gradually oppressive atmosphere proved that none of them was willing to give up the treasure. It's too early to talk about this now. If it's really Luo Tongtian who comes, then we'll discuss this matter after we kill him. Liang Qiushui spoke, breaking the silence. In the vast starry sky, Tai Xian's Dharma idol stepped forward. The scene in front of Lin Sun was like a flickering light and passing shadow, changing so quickly that it was impossible to see clearly. The speed of the teleportation was too shocking. Even with Chun Linkong's power, he couldn't bring your parents out of the flowing light forbidden zone back then. From this, it can be seen that the space-time boundary covering the flowing light forbidden zone is destined to be extremely unusual. On the way, Tai Xian said, "However, according to what you said, I have a vague feeling that the key to open the space-time boundary is very likely to be the eternal coffin." Eternal coffin? Lin Sun was surprised. Yes, your parents came to the ruins of fate to take refuge. However, they were chased by the great Qin divine clan, so they were trapped in the flowing light boundary. But don't you think that your parents should have known the existence of the flowing light forbidden zone for a long time? Otherwise, how could they know such a mysterious place when they first entered the ruins of fate? Tai Xian said slowly, if your parents fled to other places, they were destined to encounter many dangers. But the flowing light forbidden zone is different. Even the transcendent realm figures can't do anything to them. Even the eternal realm figures can't open the space-time boundary. Because of this, it is the safest choice for your parents to hide in it. Lin Sun suddenly understood and said, "If this is the case, my mother must have learned about it from my great-grandfather." Tai Xian nodded and suddenly said, "I even have some doubts that the place where Luo Tongtian obtained the eternal coffin is the flowing light forbidden zone." Lin Sun was shocked. Before he asked, Tai Xian suddenly stopped and looked at the starry sky in the distance. He said softly, "There's an aura of the transcendent realm rushing over at full speed in the distance." As he spoke, he waved his sleeves. His and Lin Sun's figures suddenly disappeared in the void, not even leaving a trace. P.S. The second update is a bit late. Chapter 2885. Qin Jiuyi's heart felt heavy. The disaster that Liang Qiushui had deduced made him realize that the great Qin divine realm had most likely undergone a great change. This meant that if Luo Tongtian had really come, the Qin clan had not captured him immediately and had even paid a hefty price to do so. How could this be? Qin Jiuyi was full of questions as he used all his strength to teleport in space. He desperately wanted to know the answer. Suddenly, Qin Jiuyi stopped in the starry sky. His pupils that were deep in his eye sockets were suffused with a frightening divine light. Ooh! Just as he spoke, terrifying laws of the great path surged from his body. They turned into countless black divine flames in the void and spread out. "Your reaction is not slow." A clear and clean voice sounded. Tai Xian's avatar appeared, and he waved his sleeve. Boom! The black divine flames in the sky seemed to be engulfed by a storm and instantly dispersed. All that was left was the void that was burned and full of holes. Martial God! Qin Jiuyi's expression changed, and he almost couldn't believe his eyes. "You just came from flowing light, forbidden area?" Tai Xian asked. Qin Jiuyi took a deep breath and cupped his hands. "Yes, I am Qin clan's Qin Jiuyi. May I ask for your name?" Tai Xian instantly smiled. "What a coincidence, I was just about to look for you." Qin Jiuyi was startled. "What do you mean?" Tai Xian explained patiently. "I was planning to go to Flowing Light Forbidden Area to save someone. I didn't think I would run into you." Hearing the words, "save someone," Qin Jiuyi's heart thumped. Before Tai Xian finished, he couldn't help but ask, "Who do you want to save?" "Luo Qingxuan and her husband," Tai Xian said casually. Qin Jiuyi's expression changed completely. "Sir, do you know that Liangqiu clan, Yin clan, and Ying clan, the three top god clans' forces are stationed near Flowing Light Forbidden Area? If you do this, I'm afraid," Tai Xian smiled, "I know them. You don't have to threaten me." Qin Jiuyi's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. A martial god had suddenly appeared, and even after knowing that there were three top-notch celestial races, he was still unafraid. This was too terrifying. Who was he? Why did he get involved? Could it be for the eternal coffin? If you're really not afraid of completely offending the three top god clans, then I don't mind leading you to the Flowing Light restricted area. Qin Jiuyi calmed his mind and spoke in a low voice. He was stalling because he knew very clearly that when facing a martial god, not to mention him alone, even the entire Qin clan wouldn't be able to go against him. Sure, Tai Xian agreed readily. However, before Qin Jiuyi could heave a sigh of relief, Tai Xian continued, "However, you only need to leave your head to lead the way." Whoosh! Before Qin Jiuyi could finish his words, Qin Jiuyi fled. His reaction was so fast that Lin Sun, who had been watching in the dark, was amazed. Tai Xian didn't panic. He tapped the air lightly. The faraway starry sky instantly shattered like a mirror. Qin Jiuyi, the transcendent realm almighty expert, fell out from within. His entire body was bathed in blood, and his hair was disheveled. He was heavily injured by just a tap of his finger. Lin Sun's mouth was dry, and his heart was in turmoil. The eternal realm's strength was too strong. There was no way to counter it. Just a martial image could easily injure an immortal level 3 transcendent realm expert. "You can't escape." As Tai Xian spoke, he took a step forward and arrived in front of Qin Jiuyi. Boom! Qin Jiuyi roared furiously. The Tao radiance on his body seemed like it was going to burn, illuminating the entire starry sky. He struggled with all his might and used all of his strength to try and escape. In that instant, Lin Sun felt a sharp pain in his eyes. His heart trembled, and he couldn't see anything. A battle of such a level wasn't something he could peek at right now. Lin Sun heard Tai Xian sigh softly. Since you know that it's futile, why don't you take your own head? If so, I might consider that it wasn't easy for you to cultivate and leave a strand of your spirit behind. Lin Sun was shocked by this sentence. Persuading the enemy to take his own head and give it to me? Senior Tai Xian. Isn't he too overbearing? When Lin Sun's vision recovered, he saw Tai Xian holding a bloody head in his hand. The head belonged to Qin Jioi. His eyes were wide open, filled with unwillingness and fear. Lin Sun was stunned. A transcendent realm existence died, just like that? Hurry up and leave. The battle here might have alerted the opponent. As he spoke, Tai Xian waved his sleeves and brought Lin Sun away. Outside the flowing light, forbidden domain. Liang Qiushui, Liang Qiyun, Ying Xiaoyuan, and other transcendent realm experts were gathered in the void. All of them had a shocked expression on their faces. Previously, they had immediately sensed the fluctuations of the battle. The aura sent chills down their spines, and they immediately rushed out. It's the aura of a Tao God realm expert. Liang Qiushui's hair and beard were all white, and he looked kind. However, his expression was filled with solemnity. In the King Path era, the Tao King realm referred to the eternal realm as the Divine King realm. In the Cloud Shadow era, wherein Xiaoyuan came from, the eternal realm was referred to as the Divine King realm. In the Prime Qing era, where Yin Ondao came from, the eternal realm was referred to as the Heaven's Gate realm. In short, different names were used to describe the eternal realm. If that's the case, the calamity this time is much more serious than we imagined. Even the overbearing Ying Xiaoyuan revealed a solemn expression. I'm curious, which old fogey came from the ruins of creation? Is he planning to interfere with the eternal coffin? Yin Ondao pondered. Since we've deduced that it's a calamity, I think we should prepare for battle. Liang Qiushui took a deep breath and said. At that moment, in the distant starry sky, a majestic silhouette slowly walked over. Behind him, a Tao sword was faintly discernible amidst the billions of rays of light. Taking a closer look, he was dressed in hemp clothes. His long hair draped over his shoulders, and his appearance was elegant. He held a bloody head in his right hand. Seeing this scene, Qin Wentian felt as though he was struck by lightning. His eyes widened as he shouted, "It's Jioi's head!" Looking at the others, their expressions changed drastically. Only then did they realize where the battle aura they had felt had come from. At the same time, they also saw through Tai Xian's aura. Their hearts churned. Indeed, those who came with ill intentions and those who were kind didn't come. However, what puzzled them was that the other party wasn't Luo Tongtian. His appearance was too unfamiliar, and he couldn't be one of the supreme experts in the ruins of creation who had proven their Tao. Then they saw Lin Sun, who was protected by Tai Xian. In comparison, Lin Sun's celestial longevity realm aura wasn't enough. It was completely suppressed by Tai Xian. At that moment, Tai Xian's voice slowly said, "If you don't want to follow in his footsteps, then leave this place now." His voice spread across the entire place. "Are you planning to declare war on us?" Liang Qiushui forcefully suppressed his emotions and said in a low voice, "If you don't leave, then it's a declaration of war." Tai Xian said casually. Beneath his calm attitude was an unquestionable tone. This made the hearts of Liang Qiushui and the others sink. Liang Qiushui suddenly said, "No, he's just an avatar. Don't be scared." Avatar? The transcendent realm old monsters were stunned. Only then did they realize what Tai Xian was trying to do. The pressure on their bodies lessened. "So what if it's an avatar? It's enough to kill all of you." Tai Xian laughed. 3 breaths. "If you don't leave, then we'll start fighting." 1. He started counting down. In the distance, Liang Qiushui and the others' expressions changed. As members of the top 3 celestial clans, how could they be willing to lower their heads and leave like that? However, Qin Jioi's death made them feel threatened. So what if it was an avatar? The power controlled by such a realm wasn't something that anyone could go against. 2. Tai Xian's voice resounded once again. It was like a bell announcing a death sentence. Liang Xiaoshui and the others felt immense pressure. At such a tense moment, Liang Xiaoshui said in a low voice, "If you can block my clan's Dao God's avatar, we'll leave immediately." As he spoke, a jade pendant appeared in his hand. Crack! The jade pendant shattered into pieces, and then a figure surged out from within it. He wore a Taoist robe, had jet black hair, a pair of peerlessly sharp brows, and a tall figure that was coiled with strands of dazzling and resplendent divine radiance. His entire body emanated an eternal and imposing aura that suppressed the Grand Tao. Ing Xiaoyuan and the others instantly felt relieved, and their bodies relaxed. Evidently, an Eternal Realms avatar gave them a lot of confidence. However, some people immediately realized something, and their expressions changed. Liang Xiaoshui had an avatar of such a level. If he used it to snatch the Eternal Coffin, who would be able to fight against him? However, they didn't say anything. It wasn't the time to care about such things. Old ancestor, thank you for fighting. Liang Xiaoshui cupped his hands. The figure in the Taoist robe nodded slightly and looked towards Tai Xian in the distance. I'm Liang Xiaoshui from the Liangqiu clan. After a pause, he added another 2 words, sword cultivator. It was a simple word, and it was a very ordinary way of calling himself. However, when it appeared on the avatar of an Eternal Realm figure, the meaning behind it was different. So what if he was a sword god? So what if he was a sword immortal? At the end of the day, he was still a cultivator on the path of sword Tao. As such, it was appropriate to call himself a sword cultivator regardless of his cultivation. I'm also a sword cultivator. Tai Xian laughed heartily, and his voice spread to Zhou Su. Your name? Liang Xiao Tianwu asked. Defeat me, and I'll tell you. Tai Xian's smile became even more carefree, and his robe fluttered in the wind. All right, Liang Xiao Tianwu nodded. Boom! The starry sky suddenly trembled. Countless stars trembled and were on the verge of collapsing. An indescribably horrifying aura spread from Liang Xiao Tianwu's body. The aura suppressed Liang Xiaoshui and the other transcendent realm cultivators, causing them to subconsciously retreat far away. They didn't want to be affected by it. Little friend, you should step back as well. Tai Xian waved his sleeve, and Lin Sun's figure was teleported far away. After that, he extended his hand and grabbed onto the Dao sword that was floating behind him. It fell into his palm, and a clanging sound resounded throughout the heavens and earth. The might of Tai Xian had also become extremely powerful at this moment. As he inhaled and exhaled, even the starry sky seemed to be drawn in, producing a tide-like trembling rhythm. Such a scene was simply unimaginable. P.S. I'll update tomorrow. Chapter 2886. A battle between Eternal Realm experts. According to Lin Sun's understanding, it could be considered as a battle between the strongest experts in the world. After all, in the eyes of countless cultivators, the Emperor Realm was already in existence that they could only look up to. The immortal path was as invisible as the divine dragon in the sky. As for the Eternal Realm, it was definitely a legend. Even for Lin Sun, who had stepped into the heavenly longevity realm, the Eternal Realm was a realm that he didn't even dare to think about. Until now, the first Eternal Realm expert that he saw was Tai Xian, and he was the only one that he had ever seen. At this moment, outside the flowing light forbidden zone, Tai Xian's avatar was about to battle against an Eternal Realm expert from the Liangqiu clan. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel shocked and expectant. How terrifying was the power of the Eternal Realm. At this moment, Lin Sun was even a little worried that he wouldn't be able to witness the battle with his current cultivation. The 7 transcendent realm experts in the distance were also unable to remain calm. Even the ruins of fate, a battle of this level was extremely rare. Usually, when such a battle occurred, it would mean that a great upheaval would occur that would affect the world situation. But now, a battle of this level was about to begin outside the flowing light forbidden zone. Liangqiu Tianwu wore a Taoist robe, and sword intent revolved around his body. He casually grabbed the void. Boom! The starry sky trembled. It was as if a piece of the heaven and earth law was grabbed and fell into Liangxiu Tianwu's palm. It condensed into an illusory sword aura, casually refining the heaven and earth law into a sword. The unparalleled power made the 7 transcendent realm experts feel suffocated. Lin Sun was completely shocked. The heaven and earth law was like the heaven's way that maintained the operation of the world, just like the great Qin divine territory. Due to the difference in the heaven and earth law, an outsider like him would be suppressed the moment he entered. Normally, cultivators would comprehend the great Tao in order to continuously transform and transcend. In the end, they would be able to contend against the heaven and earth law or even surpass the heaven and earth law. For example, the reason why the transcendent realm immortals weren't afraid of the heaven and earth law suppression was because their cultivation already possessed the power to surpass the heaven and earth law. But now, Liangxiu Tianwu's grab had refined the heaven and earth law for his own use. This was undoubtedly too terrifying. The Grand Tao laws are born from the power of order, and the power of order is born from the rules of heaven and earth. The transcendent realm is not bound by the rules of heaven and earth of the epic world, while the eternal realm can use the rules of heaven and earth to destroy or create with a single thought. In the distance, Tai Xian's clear voice rang out. Little friend, in this battle, I will use the sword in my hand to describe this realm to you. Even if you cannot understand the mysteries within, you can see its form and feel its spirit. When you achieve eternity, you'll have both form and spirit and truly understand the mysteries of this realm. His clothes were fluttering. As he spoke, a wisp of sword chi swept out of his fingertips and appeared between Lin Sun's eyebrows out of nowhere. Suddenly, Lin Sun's perception and vision changed. The starry sky was still the same starry sky, yet countless obscure and miraculous auras surged into appearance. They were like the foundation stones and pillars that held up a house, and they maintained the operation of this expanse of the starry sky. The obscure aura was everywhere, and it filled every inch of space. The stars, dust, light, and even every single person was surging with this sort of aura. When the 7 transcendent realm experts circulated their qi, they seemed to have detached themselves from the ubiquitous, obscure aura. They seemed to be extremely transcendent. As for Tai Xian and Liangxiu Tianwu, the obscure aura seemed to have surrendered to them. As their qi circulated, it produced a mysterious rhythm and change. Especially Liangxiu Tianwu. The sword qi in his hand was formed by the obscure aura. He seemed to be the supreme ruler that controlled the sword of heaven way. Lin Sun was shocked. He knew that the ubiquitous obscure aura was actually the power of the rules of heaven and earth. Previously, he could only comprehend it, but couldn't see it. Clang! Liangxiu Tianwu attacked, and the sword qi in his hand stabbed out. It was a simple sword. In the starry sky, countless stars burst like a punctured ball. Those transcendent realm experts were all stiff. They had to circulate all their qi to resolve the omnipresent destructive aura. The sword qi lingered between Lin Sun's eyebrows, like a natural barrier, which resolved all the influence. Through the power of the sword qi, he could clearly see the trajectory and aura of this sword. However, because of the huge gap in qi, although he could see the power of this sword, he couldn't feel its mystery. But the power of this sword was firmly remembered by Lin Sun. It felt like an immortal performing martial arts, and he was like an ordinary person. His mind was attracted by a kind of momentum. In a flash, Tai Xian also drew his sword. He raised his sword and chopped down. It was also extremely simple. However, the power of this chop seemed to be able to split heaven and earth, mountains and rivers, and Tao. It gave people a domineering power that could kill even gods. Liangxiu Tianwu squinted his eyes slightly. The sword that he stabbed out suddenly turned around and rolled back to the sky. Tai Xian took back his sword and swept it horizontally. For a time, the two fought with their swords. There was almost no superfluous movement, such as stabbing, chopping, cutting, picking, curling, collapsing, or slashing. They were all the simplest and simplest sword movements. It felt like watching two swordsmen fighting in the secular world. There were no moves. There were no secret methods. However, the might released by every single strike had already reached a terrifying level that could shock the world. In Lin Sun's eyes, each sword was the extreme use of the power of heaven and earth, which showed the terrifying attainments of the two eternal realm experts in Sword Tao. If an outsider was here at this moment, then the scene they saw was an expanse of destruction, collapse, and chaos. Countless stars were falling while the grand Daos were collapsing. The ultimate of Sword Tao, in the final analysis, is one. Within one sword, there can be as many changes as the grains of sand in the Ganges River. The power of one sword can break the infinite method of heaven and earth. Tai Xian's voice sounded leisurely in Lin Sun's mind. One gives birth to two, two gives birth to three gives birth to infinite, infinite gives birth to one, just like the eternal realm. In the past, the path of Tao was born from one, constantly transforming and evolving. In the end, when the mystery of the rules of heaven and earth is broken, everything can be eternal. Lin Sun suddenly felt enlightened. He stared into the distance and saw Tai Xian's mighty figure killing with his sword. His bearing was like a god. Between the sword essence, the rules of heaven and earth changed, and infinite mystery was integrated into his sword. It was the same for Liangqiu Tianwu. Every sword move was extremely simple, and every sword move contained infinite mystery. It was incredible and beyond imagination. Although he couldn't comprehend the mystery, Lin Sun felt a real form and spirit momentum. Looking at the form and feeling the spirit, his mind was immersed in it, and he completely forgot the time. After a long time, Lin Sun's heart trembled. Then he saw that the battle between Tai Xian and Liangqiu Tianwu had ended. The starry sky was still the same. The destroyed stars and void were vast and quiet as before, as if they hadn't suffered any damage at all. But Lin Sun noticed that the 7 transcendent realm existences in the distance were either shocked, frightened, confused, or stunned. Their minds seemed to have just experienced the impact of a storm, and they couldn't calm down at this moment. Tai Xian put his hands behind his back, and there were billions of auspicious lights flowing behind him. With his hands behind his back, his power was still so strong that it made people feel small and insignificant, and they could only look up to him. Liangqiu Tianwu in the distance let out a long sigh. This sword principle is really amazing. His voice was filled with emotion, satisfaction, and a trace of unwillingness. Tai Xian smiled. You flatter me. Can you let them leave? Liangqiu Tianwu asked. Tai Xian smiled and shook his head. I set the rules. 3 breaths have passed, and they have no way out. Liangqiu Tianwu was silent for a while, and then he said, If so, I'll have a life-and-death battle with you. Without a sound, a sword mark appeared on his willpower, and his figure was split into 2 halves, disappearing without a trace. Lin Sun's pupil shrank. Only then did he realize that the battle had ended because Liangqiu Tianwu had been split into 2 by a sword. In the distance, Liangqiu Shui and the other 6 transcendent realm experts felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Even Liangqiu Tianwu's will was slain. Let's go. Yin Ondao and Yin Onxing immediately teleported and fled with all their might. Tai Xian's reply to Liangqiu Tianwu was equivalent to sentencing them to death. But who would sit still and wait for death? Almost at the same time, Liangqiu Shui, Liangqiu Yun, Ying Xiaoyuan, Ying Qing, and Qin Wenjin also took action. The 7 transcendent realm experts fled at full speed. Such a scene was an eye-opener for Lin Sun. At least in the past, he had never thought that such terrifying old monsters would flee in such a hurry. This undoubtedly proved that the threat of Tai Xian was too great. It was so serious that they didn't dare to resist and struggle at all. I asked you to leave before, but you didn't. Now I don't want you to leave, but you just want to leave. Why do you have to humiliate yourselves like this? Tai Xian let out a long sigh. He shook his wrist, and the Taoist's sword in his palm suddenly disappeared out of thin air. Whoosh! Suddenly, countless sword auras filled the starry sky like a chaotic flood. The sword chimes resounded through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. 840 million swords filled the starry sky. Lin Sun was immediately shocked. In the distance, a series of groans, screams, and shouts sounded. After that, everything returned to silence. The sword auras that filled the starry sky disappeared silently like a stream of light. Dead? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. I guarantee that he won't come back to life. Tai Xian smiled brightly. Lin Sun took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. He said, Senior, is this the power of the eternal realm? Tai Xian thought for a while and said, Strictly speaking, it can only be regarded as the power of the will. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. He couldn't help but think that the will of Tai Xian was already so tyrannical. How terrifying would Tai Xian's original body be? P.S. The second watch is around 7:30 p.m. Don't worry, there will be an extra update tonight. Chapter 2887. Seeing how surprised Lin Sun was, Tai Xian couldn't help but smile. He explained in a gentle voice, Once an Eternal Realm character makes a move, it will definitely cause a change in the rules of heaven and earth. They might even suffer from the backlash and attacks of the rules of heaven and earth. Just now, if my original body was here, the rules of this starry sky would definitely suppress me after sensing the danger. In the eternal true world, only the 9th heaven can withstand the battle of Eternal Realm characters. It is an eternal world, and Eternal Realm characters can also cultivate there. All of this means that it is almost impossible for you to meet a true Eternal Realm powerhouse in other places. At most, you will only meet a Dharma idol like mine. After listening to this, Lin Sun suddenly understood something. The rules of heaven and earth could be used by Eternal Realm characters, but it would also cause a backlash to Eternal Realm characters. This place is no longer safe. Hurry up and go to the flowing light forbidden zone. Tai Xian pointed into the distance. That place was suffused with primal chaos. Long and narrow arcs of light were faintly discernible, flickering with terrifying radiance. That was the power of the space-time barrier. Within the space-time barrier was the flowing light forbidden zone, the place where Lin Sun's parents were trapped. Lin Sun took a deep breath and walked straight forward. Remember to hurry up, Tai Xian reminded him. Lin Sun nodded. He took out the abyssal sword cauldron to protect his body. However, when he really entered the chaos and saw the scene inside, Lin Sun immediately stopped. Boom! Countless thick and dazzling space-time cracks were like violent hurricanes. They constantly wreaked havoc and intertwined, showing a chaotic scene of destruction. With just a glance, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. It was too terrifying. No wonder no one could enter the flowing light forbidden zone for countless years, even if they knew that his parents were trapped in it. Even those transcendent realm existences didn't dare to enter this place. The space-time barrier covering this place was too terrifying. Just based on his intuition, Lin Sun concluded that the abyssal sword cauldron's power might not be able to withstand the invasion of space-time power. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun took out the eternal coffin. Suddenly, Lin Sun keenly felt that as the aura of the eternal coffin spread, the space-time turbulence closest to it gradually calmed down. Senior Tai Xian's speculation is indeed correct. The eternal coffin is most likely a key to open the space-time barrier. Lin Sun was enlightened, but he couldn't help but wonder, but how did my parents enter the flowing light forbidden area without the eternal coffin? Thinking up to here, his heart stirred, and with a clang, the sword of fortune appeared in his palm. Buzz! At this moment, the sword of creation produced a strange buzzing sound, as if it was cheering in joy. Ripples of time spread out from the trembling sword. Instantly, a miraculous change occurred in the chaotic flow of time. It was as if numerous tame beasts had fallen into stillness and remained motionless. The sword of creation, the eternal coffin. These two treasures should be closely related to the flowing light forbidden area, And regardless of whether it was my great-grandfather or my parents, they probably relied on the sword of creation to enter this place. Lin Sun completely understood. Without hesitation, he put away the coffin of eternity. Holding the sword of creation, he walked towards the depths of the space-time boundary that had fallen into a state of stillness. Boom! When Lin Sun's figure completely disappeared in it, the originally stillness of the space-time boundary suddenly became violent again, rolling and shaking constantly. In the distant starry sky, Tai Xian sat cross-legged. There were a few hundred cultivators of the Qin clan hiding within the palaces in the vicinity, and they were shivering while feeling terrified and uneasy. However, Tai Xian didn't bother to pay attention to them at all. Inside the space-time boundary, it was a mystic realm with verdant hills and limpid waters. In the center of this world, there was a black mountain standing straight into the sky, like a heavenly pillar supporting the blue sky, extremely majestic and spectacular. At the peak of the mountain stood an ancient palace that was bathed in the eternal darkness of the night, mysterious and solemn. On one side of this palace, there was a thatched cottage. In front of the cottage were planted flowers, vegetables, fruits, and vegetables, which were trimmed in a wild manner. A wall made of blue stone surrounded the cottage, forming a courtyard. In the center of the courtyard, there were tables and futons. A man and a woman were sitting on the futons at this time, and the man was meditating quietly. The woman was knitting clothes, and her slender and white fingers were twirling a thin and transparent cloud essence that she had just picked, constantly intertwining at her fingertips. Soon, a plain and clean robe was completed. The woman got up, picked up the robe, looked at it, and said happily, "Wenjing, what do you think of this robe?" The man who was meditating opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Good. Very good, very good. Did you make it for me?" The woman put away the robe like a treasure and said with a smile, "It's for Sun, don't worry about it." The man smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "I expected it, but we don't know how long we will be trapped here. No matter how many clothes you make for him, he won't have a chance to wear them." The woman's eyes glistened, and she said seriously, "He will definitely be able to wear it in the future." The man nodded and said in a gentle voice, "Qing Xuan, I know that you've been thinking about that child all these years. It's just that he left us when he was still an infant. Even if we have the chance to meet in the future, I'm afraid that it'll be difficult for us, his parents, to interact without any estrangement. MHM, we actually don't even know what this child looks like or what character he has." As he spoke, his voice became low and his eyes dimmed. This was his sore point. He even felt that he was too useless and useless as a father. The woman walked up, hugged the man from behind, and said softly, "No matter what this child looks like now, and no matter what personality he has in my heart, he is the best. You, don't blame yourself anymore. If it wasn't for me, how could your Lin clan be in such a mess?" The man took a deep breath, gently grabbed the woman's hand, and said with a smile, "This is fate. We deserve to be together." The woman also smiled and said, "I don't believe in fate, but don't you think it's strange? Back then in Xiao Empire, I fell in love with you. Even after I recover my memory, I never had the thought of leaving you." The man couldn't help but feel proud, and said, "To be chosen by a proud woman like you, I can only say that I, Lin Wenjing, am not that unbearable." The woman pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Of course, you are ugly, but if you're chosen by me, you will be the best ugly in the world." The man pretended to be angry and said, "Well, you dare to mock me as ugly." He got up and was about to pounce on the woman, wanting to hug her. At this moment, the man suddenly found that something was wrong. The woman's eyes stared straight out of the courtyard, as if she was crazy, and as if she had lost her soul. "This is?" The man looked in the direction of her gaze. He saw a tall figure standing outside the courtyard's wooden door. He was dressed in moon-white clothes, and his black hair hung loosely on his shoulders, revealing a handsome and firm face. The man was stunned as if he was struck by lightning. For a moment, the inside and outside of the courtyard was silent, and it seemed as if some inexplicable emotion was silently fermenting and surging. After a while, the woman said with a trembling voice, "Sooner, is that you?" Her voice was choked with sobs, and 2 lines of tears flowed down her fair and beautiful face. Her graceful figure was trembling slightly at this moment. Her eyes were dazed, and there was surprise, anxiety, and excitement in them that was difficult to conceal. It was as if she was afraid that everything before her eyes was a dream. Even if he was mentally prepared, even if he had seen his mother's Dharma idol in the eternal true world, when he saw her in person, Lin Sun's heart still went out of control like a raging sea. "Mother, it's me." His voice was dry, and every word seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies. The scenes of the past years swept through his mind like a storm, and it caused his eyes to become dazed. Luo Qingxuan seemed to be unable to control herself any longer. She rushed forward and hugged Lin Sun tightly. "Sunner, I finally see you." As she spoke, she couldn't help crying, and her tears wet Lin Sun's clothes. He hugged Luo Qingxuan tightly, and indescribable joy and excitement surged in his heart. He wanted to say something several times, but he found that any words seemed to be so pale at this moment. After a while, Luo Qingxuan raised her head, took 2 steps back, and wiped her red eyes. She looked at Lin Sun seriously, and an indescribable joy gradually surged in her eyes. She said, "Sunner, I've been thinking about what you look like and what kind of character you will have all these years, but when I saw you just now, I forgot everything. There's only one thought in my mind, and that's that you're my child. I can't be wrong." As she spoke, she thought of something, turned her head, and said, "Wenjing, Sunner is here. Why don't you come over?" Lin Wenjing, who had been in a daze, was also extremely excited at this moment. He seemed to be at a loss, as if he didn't know how to contact his long-lost child. "Father." Lin Sun took a deep breath, stepped forward, and hugged Lin Wenjing with his arms. "I'm here to pick you and mother up from here. After that, our family will be reunited." Lin Wenjing seemed to be unable to control his emotions any longer. He patted Lin Sun's back with trembling hands and said, "Son, I've wronged you these years." As he said, his nose was sour, and he couldn't help crying. Guilt, excitement, joy, all kinds of emotions intertwined, making him a big man, seemed to lose his composure. "What's wrong? As long as our family is reunited, it's more important than anything else." Lin Sun laughed. Not far away, watching the scene of the father and son hugging, Luo Qingxuan smiled brightly, but tears flowed down from her eyes. These were tears of joy. After so many years, the family had finally reunited. There was nothing more joyous than this in the world. After a long time, Luo Qingxuan took a deep breath and rushed into the hut. When she came back, she was holding a thick pile of clothes in her arms, as if holding a small hill. "Sunner, I've made a lot of clothes and shoes for you over the years. Come try them on," Luo Qingxuan said expectantly. Looking at these clothes and his mother's happy and expectant look, the softest string in Lin Sun's heart seemed to be touched, and his eyes became slightly moist. After the goldfish finished eating, he would continue to write the 3rd chapter